The story begins with a ceremony that seemingly went wrong. The young girl who was the subject of the ceremony, Sarashina, received no blessing, despite everyone else receiving one from the gods or spirits. A few years later, matchmaking resumes came flooding in. But all Sarashina could think about was how shallow the applicants seemed. She was the daughter of a marquis, so she didn't deny the idea of a political marriage, but she knew she should at least have some standards. Sarashina did want to get married, but she didn't want it to be loveless. There was a knock at her door and Sarashina wondered who it could be. She called the guest in, and it turned out to be one of her maids, arriving with the last background check. Sarashina thanked her, but the maid instantly noticed Sarashina's somber gaze. She asked the young lady if something was the matter. The maid asked if Sarashina was engaged to Lord Solatique. Sarashina agreed flatly. The maid asked why she was looking at matchmaking materials when the Lord treated her so well, but Sarashina mumbled that it was because the engagement would be broken off soon anyway. The maid barely heard her, so Sarashina smiled and simply asked for a pot of tea instead. Sarashina knew she didn't want to look for a new fiancé. If only there was a way to escape this difficult situation. She had memories of her past life, and in that life she already knew this world. It was from a popular fantasy otome game, The Maidens of Asgard. The world consisted of the Great Temple and 5 countries, with the Kingdom of Albalai as the main setting. Sarashina should have been thrilled to be reincarnated into her favorite game. The only issue was the character she reincarnated into. Sarashina was a beautiful young noble lady abandoned by the gods. Her childhood friend and fiancé, Solatique, was the first prince of the kingdom and one of the main romance targets. The heroine, who had already triggered a flag at the party, was now pursuing Solatique. Meanwhile, Sarashina's status as the game's villain remained. To make matters worse, if the heroine achieved her happy ending, Sarashina would be dumped and exiled. Even worse, in the game, Sarashina was overcome by jealousy. She was accused of poisoning Solatique and the heroine and sentenced to death. So now, she was at what was meant to be the blissful stage of her engagement, knowing only that her bleak future was around the corner. Sarashina did everything she could to be worthy of staying by Lord Solatique's side, even without a blessing. But the heroine was destined to fall for him, because that was the fate of this world. Sarashina trusted that her character would not go as far as poisoning anyone, but she still might have to follow the scenario due to the game's scripted events. She didn't want to die, of course, but she especially didn't want Lord Solatique to die. Sarashina snapped herself out of her deep thoughts. Fortunately, she no longer had strong feelings for Solatique, and she knew she was capable of smiling and blessing them both. There was another knock at her door, and Sarashina wondered if it was Anna. But instead, it was Lord Solatique himself. She had no idea he was coming. Sarashina was flustered to see him, but Solatique apologized for dropping by so suddenly. He told her he just wanted to see her, using his errand with the Marquis as an excuse to visit. Sarashina didn't know what to say. Wasn't the heroine supposed to already be winning him over at this stage? It seemed that didn't matter to him. Solatique asked what was wrong, and Sarashina mumbled that Anna would be bringing tea shortly. She instructed him to take a seat on the sofa, but Solatique's eyes drifted to the piles of paper on the table. Seeing that the matchmaking materials were in sight, Sarashina rushed to clean them up, mumbling that it was just some old paperwork. Solatique smiled innocently. He called her Sari, and his voice made her melt. She needed to find an excuse to leave, telling him she would check on Anna. When she turned her back, Solatique couldn't help but pick up the papers and instantly recognized them as matchmaking bios and background reports. He asked her if they weren't already engaged and if he wasn't good enough for her. If he was, why was she searching for another man? Sarashina began to sweat, telling him it wasn't what he thought. She wondered if this would be the point where she mentioned the other woman and suggested calling off the engagement. But instead, she told him that she was an incomplete person who couldn't even receive a blessing and that someone blessed by the war god himself shouldn't be with someone like her. Her words were not taken well by Solatique, who asked why she was still hung up on that. He didn't choose his fiancée based on what blessing she had. Sarashina agreed, telling him she knew he was kind. Solatique pulled her into a hug. He told her there was no need to search for a new fiancé. Even without a blessing, he would protect her. Solatique gazed lovingly into Sarashina's eyes. It was intimate enough for Sarashina to apologize. She hadn't realized how hard it would be to break off this engagement. She knew she had messed up too, having no idea Solatique would drop by today. When it was time for him to leave, he promised he would be back soon, and Sarashina promised that she would be waiting for him. When Solatique had left, Sarashina reflected on how they were still technically engaged. So of course he would be angry. But there probably wasn't a decent person who would marry a girl without a blessing anyway. Lords enriched their territories using the power of their blessings. However, as someone who had played the game, Sarashina knew how to use the territory management system, but she didn't have a sacred tree or a territory, and it would be disastrous if someone without a blessing tried managing one. Sarashina's father was blessed by the sun god and it all seemed so unfair until Sarashina came up with an idea. She could always just borrow her father's territory. There was a knock at the door and Anna came with the tea. Anna smiled, noticing how cheerful Sarashina seemed. Sarashina announced that she wanted to go out and asked Anna to help her prepare. Anna began to pour the tea but spilled it when she heard Sarashina's plans. She told her lady she would get everything ready immediately. The truth was it was rare for Sarashina to go out, especially considering her lack of blessing, which often made her want to stay in her room. Sarashina set out on the long journey to her father's territory. Her carriage needed to travel through the city to get there. It had been a while since Sarashina had seen this place. Although she did remember going on stealth dates in the city, a strategy used to raise affection in the game. She remembered how easy it was to go on a date. Wearing glasses was disguise enough. But in real life, curious onlookers were everywhere. As Sarashina looked out the window, she saw Solatik with another woman. Now Sarashina had 3 options. First, confront him head-on. Second, pretend not to notice and bump into him in the same shop. And finally, pretend she hadn't seen anything at all. Sarashina looked to the other side of the carriage and decided to go with the last option. But Anna recognized Solatik just as quickly as Sarashina did, and she was outraged. She told Sarashina that this was a serious matter and the Lord needed to explain himself, or they should at least report what they saw to her father. Sarashina told her to relax and asked her not to tell him. The truth was that most people had a mark of blessing that appeared with divine favor. Yet no matter where Sarashina looked, she couldn't find one. Because she had no blessing, she was always looked down on. It was honestly a miracle her parents never abandoned her. If she went outside, she would only bring shame to the family. Sarashina couldn't help but give one last glance at Solatik and his companion. He bought a bouquet of flowers from a stall and handed it to the woman. Meanwhile, the only bouquet Sarashina had ever received from him was roses. She had been happy, but seeing this new girl's smile made her feel a different kind of sadness. Of course, it was because those were the flowers given to the heroine, a special kind. Sarashina and Anna finally arrived at her father's territory, Linkrat, the capital city of Harmel. Anna mentioned how the last time her lady visited was when she was little, and Sarashina said she vaguely remembered the place. Of course, it had improved with many new and charming spots. Anna asked if she wanted to explore, but Sarashina was more interested in seeing the sacred tree first. They headed in that direction, but a woman suddenly crashed into Sarashina. She apologized, but the woman stayed silent. Anna asked if Sarashina was all right, and she brushed off the odd encounter, until they realized her bag was open and her wallet missing. Sarashina remembered that there was a bookmark inside her wallet that Solatik had given her. A passerby offered to retrieve it, and Sarashina noticed the stranger was a child. The bookmark was sentimental, so she knew she needed it back. She thanked the boy, who mentioned he needed some help himself. He set off, instructing Sarashina and Anna to wait. Sarashina called out for him to be careful. When he left, Anna mentioned she was convinced the child would ask for money. Sarashina knew that although it seemed like a nice town, there would still inevitably be some shady sides. Eliminating all the bad parts would be difficult. It took money, time, and effort. A few moments later, the child returned with Sarashina's wallet. She was overjoyed, pulling out the beautiful bookmark. Solatik had been so proud when he first gave it to her, especially since he made it himself. Sarashina noticed that the money was still inside and ignorantly commented on it, which angered the boy. He told her bluntly that he had promised to return it, so of course the contents would remain. Sarashina laughed awkwardly, apologizing for doubting him. She introduced herself as Sarashina, and the boy introduced himself as Hisui, but the conversation quickly shifted as the boy asked for Sarashina's help. He guided her and Anna down a back alley. It was there that Sarashina gasped in shock. Hisui pointed ahead and asked if she could help this one. In front of Sarashina was a divine beast lying sick on the side of the alley. Meanwhile, Solatik rode in the back of his carriage, his mind racing with thoughts. He remembered Sarashina's words, how she had called herself someone who couldn't even receive a spirit's blessing, how she believed she was incomplete. He recalled how she once told him she wasn't worthy of someone like him, a man blessed by the war god. Despite Sarashina's hesitation, Solatik knew there was nothing for her to be troubled or worried about. When his carriage finally approached his estate, he was greeted by his butler and a few passing ladies. They greeted him with a curtsy, clearly pleased by the unexpected encounter. Solatik returned their greeting, vaguely recalling the last time he had seen them. One of the women told him it was a pleasure to see him again before mentioning how disappointed her daughter had been to miss the chance to dance with him at the last banquet. Solatik smiled and offered a polite apology, but the daughter quickly stepped forward to ask if she could dance with him at the next one. Solatik's smile remained, but his voice was firm. He explained that his fiancée was not yet used to attending banquets, so he didn't want to leave her to dance with other women. The girl's mother spoke again, first acknowledging his thoughtfulness, then slyly asking if it was true that Lady Sarashina was without a blessing. She added a remark about how worrisome that would be for the country's future. Her daughter tried to interject, insisting that Lord Solatique was too kind to end an engagement over something like that. But her mother argued the importance of blessings for the nation, reminding her daughter that she was lucky to have received one from the moon god Mani. Turning back to Solatique, she asked if he agreed, but Solatique quickly shut down the conversation. Even without a blessing, he told them, Sarashina was precious to him. That was precisely why the war god had blessed him, to protect his fiancée. Back in town, Sarashina invited Hisui and the beast into her carriage. She told them they could return to her estate where she could arrange for a doctor. Curious, she asked Hisui what the animal's name was. His name's Toy, the boy said proudly. He explained how he had named the creature himself, and how they had been together since he was small. Toy always keeping him warm on cold days. It had always been just the two of them. Sarashina smiled gently, reassuring him that everything would be fine. Divine beasts had incredibly strong life force after all. Hisui blinked in confusion. Divine beast? Sarashina nodded, explaining that Toy was an extraordinary being and would recover quickly. The journey passed in relative silence. When they arrived, Sarashina was greeted by the servants. She apologized for the unannounced visit, explaining that the matter was urgent. The head steward hurried forward, asking if her family was safe. Sarashina assured him they were fine, though she was quickly overwhelmed by all the familiar faces. She showed them Toy, who was too weak to move. The head steward examined him closely and said it looked like the creature had been injured. They quickly prepared a room and helped Hisui carry Toy inside. Another servant escorted Sarashina to rest, while the steward suggested Hisui take a bath. When the boy returned, he looked like a completely different person. Still, he seemed unimpressed, muttering about how strange nobles were for not being allowed to bathe alone. It was odd, he thought, living with a divine beast might actually make him more impressive than a heroine or a capture target. Sarashina watched him, wondering if being so close to a divine beast somehow affected him. Her cheeks warmed as she thought about it. Did divine beasts warm up to anyone? She hoped Toy would be kind to her too, even though she was without a blessing. Hisui noticed her drifting off and asked what was wrong. Sarashina laughed softly, admitting she was worried Toy wouldn't like her once he recovered. Hisui couldn't help but laugh. You're really worried about that? You're a noble living in a fancy mansion, he grinned. Don't worry, I've got a feeling you two will get along just fine. And my intuition's always spot on. Despite Suna's protests, Hisui insisted that Toy didn't need to be called Lord Toy just because he was a divine beast. Before long, Toy was up again, smiling sweetly at Sarashina and Hisui. Sarashina could hardly believe how quickly he had recovered. She smiled brightly at the fluffy, adorable creature. He was everything she had imagined. I'm so happy you're feeling better, Lord Toy, she said softly. Toy didn't respond to Sarashina's call at first, and she wondered if it was because she was a villainess in the game. But Hisui reminded her not to call him Lord, just call him Toy. Despite it feeling disrespectful, Sarashina reluctantly called out Toy, and the beast came up to her, woofing and smiling. He was so cute. As Sarashina petted him, she couldn't help but notice how healing his fur was. She smiled, telling Hisui how happy she was to be able to touch Toy. Hisui suggested that maybe he realized she helped him, so that's why he was so attached. Breakfast was served, and Hisui was drooling over the feast. He asked if it was really okay for him to eat. Sarashina told him it was fine, of course. And Hisui could feel free to eat as much as he wanted. So Hisui did exactly that, munching up everything. As he ate, Sarashina thought to herself what her new friends will do next. It didn't seem like Hisui had any family, and was it really okay to toss a child like that just because the healing was done? Sarashina thought to herself that even if she can't save every child without a place to go, at the very least she wanted to help the ones she's already reached out to until the end. Hisui finished and he smiled. It had been a while since he ate that much food. He thanked Sarashina for everything, but of course Sarashina reminded Hisui that it was him who helped her get her wallet back. But Hisui told her what she did was more than enough, even feeding him in the process. Sarashina smiled, calling Hisui a good kid. Hisui told Sarashina to stop treating him like a kid, announcing he was 16 years old. Sarashina was beyond shocked to hear they were actually the same age. She apologized before asking Hisui if he wanted to work under her, if he was okay with it, of course. Sarashina explained how she wanted to be able to live by herself in this town, but she didn't know much about it. That's why she needed Hisui to teach her. Hisui let Sarashina know that he didn't know any manners, and there wasn't much he could do. But Sarashina told him that everyone starts out that way. Hisui looked at Toy, who was cheerful as ever. He petted his head, taking that as a seal of approval. Hisui turned to Sarashina and told her he would be down, and Sarashina smiled. She was super happy that he was staying. She thanked both him and Toy for saying yes. That day, Sarashina decided to visit her father. She told him that Hisui should be done changing soon. Her father smiled, surprised that the day went down the way it did. He told Sarashina it was rare for her to ask for something, and Sarashina apologized, but her father was pleased. But he reminded his daughter that once she was married, she won't be able to bring her butler in training to the palace. Whilst he was on the topic, he asked Sarashina if everything was beginning to feel more real, considering she was to be married soon. But Sarashina told her father it wasn't, her face dropping. Her father assumed it was just the usual pre-wedding jitters, but Sarashina's face said it all. Her father asked if it was because of the rumors, explaining that word spread that Solatik was close with another woman. Sarashina wondered if this was the heroine. Her father admitted he cleared things up with Solatik himself, which shocked Sarashina. Her father explained that Solatik insisted there was no truth to the rumors, and there was no way the engagement will be broken. Sarashina was confused by this, but what could she do? She told her father that if he wasn't bothered, then it must be fine. She herself knew how kind Solatik was though, so it could still be hard for him to be truthful. Her father told her how he doesn't pay attention to rumors like that. Before the conversation could continue, there was a knock at the door. It was Hisui. He introduced himself to Sarashina's father. Sarashina stood by her apprentice and smiled, telling her father he hadn't been trained in etiquette yet. Sarashina's father introduced himself as Baisel, before telling Hisui he heard all about him. Sarashina smiled, announcing her butler will be employed directly by her, at least until she is married. But her father let her know they could always speak to him if they needed anything. Training began, and Sarashina began by asking Hisui to address her by lady since he was working for her. Hisui told her he understood, calling her Lady Sari. Sarashina guessed that he may have picked up her nickname from her father. She passed Hisui a key, telling him it was for her room, followed by a small gift. Hisui took it and thanked her, as Sarashina instructed him to keep the key around his neck. As for the pocket watch, he could keep it in his inner pocket. Hisui looked at Sarashina with a burning question. He asked her if she really had no divine blessing. Sarashina smiled awkwardly, but Hisui looked her in the eye as if there was something else on his mind. Solatik made his way down Sarashina's hallways, and Anna told him how she was in a great mood after going out. Solatik smiled, guessing it was down to his own advice he gave her, how Sarashina went out. He thought he could even suggest them go out together next time. Solatik made his way to Sarashina's door, pushing it open whilst calling her name. But of course he walked in on her with Hisui, who still had his hands on her shoulder. The entire situation couldn't have looked any more suspicious. Toy enjoyed himself out in the gardens. A butterfly flew and landed on his nose. He innocently played with it, waving his paws and barking when it eventually flew away. Toy looked down, sleepy. He looked so cute, finally being able to enjoy a green and spacious landscape over the dark and dingy village. Meanwhile, all hell was breaking loose inside the house. Solatik demanded to know who this guy was with his fiancée before he pulled Hisui off Sarashina. Sarashina told Solatik to calm down, as the boy she was with was her personal butler in training. Hisui introduced himself, guessing the crazy man was Sarashina's fiancé. But Solatik was still confused over what was going on. He told Hisui that Sarashina was about to marry him, so she wouldn't need a butler anymore. But Sarashina explained how Hisui helped her when she was in trouble, and that was why he was here now. Despite her explaining, Solatik told her he couldn't just overlook what happened. He was pissed, and made it clear to them both. Hisui defended Sarashina, telling Solatik that she wasn't doing anything improper. It was just that she looked beautiful. Of course, this only angered Solatik more. He asked Hisui if he was really trying to seduce his fiancée, but Hisui told him that he only meant that her eyes looked beautiful. It was the first time he saw someone with a divine blessing marked in their eyes. His words confused Sarashina. What did he mean by divine blessing? Solatik told Hisui that he had never heard of someone having a blessing in their eyes. Hisui explained that he had seen Sari's eyes many times, and there was never anything like that. And Solatik then took a look into Sarashina's eyes. He aggressively concluded that there was no mark. Sarashina didn't know what to think. Maybe Hisui was just being considerate of her. She decided enough was enough and asked Hisui to go and ask Anna to prepare some tea. Hisui saw it as an opportunity to dip, but before he could, Toy wandered in. Sarashina smiled and suggested they have tea together. Hisui told his beast to behave. Sarashina smiled, knowing the dog was smart so there was no need to be worried. Solatik looked at the animal and he was introduced to Toy. Solatik took a closer look, thinking to himself. Perhaps he knew that Toy wasn't any ordinary dog too. Sarashina explained that he was really friendly. Despite not warming up to any of the servants, he did to Solatik, who knelt down to pet him. Solatik asked Toy if he liked his mark as he brushed against his hand. Solatik recognized him as a divine beast, since he was drawn to the blessing mark. At least that's how it worked in the literature Solatik read. Divine beasts were beings everyone knew about, but their appearance was rarely seen, and they didn't know much about them. He finished by telling Sarashina not to let Hisui near her too much. vaguely telling her that someone like him wasn't fit to be her butler. When Sarashina looked at him blankly, Solatik informed her that Hisui lied about seeing a mark in her eyes. But Sarashina made it clear she was not going to dismiss Hisui. She told Solatik how her wallet was stolen, which contained the precious bookmark that Solatik gave to her himself, and it was Hisui who got it back for her. She showed him the old bookmark before telling him to try not to be too cold towards Hisui. Solatik got on one knee, telling Sarashina he was pleased she treasured the bookmark, but he cared more about her than that. He asked her to not put herself in danger over something like that again. Otherwise, he may need to order her not to go outside out of worry. Sarashina didn't realize how concerned the Lord was for her. His words were really taking her by surprise. But Solatik explained that he was her fiancé, so of course he was going to worry. He asked Sarashina to at least be aware of how much he loved her. Sarashina agreed to speak to Hisui herself, gently asking Solatik to let this one go. Solatik agreed, but told Sarashina he didn't want another occasion like this to happen again. Sarashina closed the door and realized that this was a close call. She almost ended up completely smitten. She knew she needed to start managing a domain and become independent as soon as possible. A few moments passed and Sarashina ran into Hisui. He asked if she had seen Toy anywhere. Sarashina told him she hadn't seen Toy since she saw Lord Solatik off. Suddenly, Toy ran around the corner and they both asked where he had been. It was then that the butler, Mr. Hanley, drifted toward them, and they instantly saw that he was angry with leaves stuck in his hair. Mr. Hanley told them he had simply tried to put a ribbon on Toy, but Toy ran away. This led to Mr. Hanley chasing the dog all around the estate. Anna was surprised that Toy was so playful around her, mentioning that animals usually didn't warm up to her, as Hisui tied the bow around his neck. He looked super cute in the end. Even Sarashina's father was impressed by how smart Toy looked, and at least he wouldn't be mistaken for a stray. The group tried to figure out why Toy was so responsive to certain people. They remembered how he liked the mark of divine blessings, and since he was practically a sacred beast, they wondered if Toy had snuggled up to Lord Solatik because he was blessed by the rare god Tyr. It turned out that both Anna and Mr. Hanley had spirit blessings, and Sarashina's father had the blessing of the sun god Sol. Sarashina wondered if Toy was drawn to divine blessings since he was a sacred beast. But she also wondered what made Hisui fit that theory. What kind of blessing did he have? Was he telling the truth when he said that she had a blessing too? She hoped that if she truly did have a blessing, then maybe she could have her own domain someday. Sarashina turned to her father and told him she had a favor to ask. Her father suggested they discuss it in his office. There, her father said he was pleased that Sari had been coming up with so many requests for him lately. He asked if it had something to do with Hisui, but Sarashina told him it didn't. Instead, she announced that she wanted a domain of her own. Her father was silent, and Sarashina explained that she didn't need to manage it entirely on her own. Instead, she suggested that her father lend her a portion of his domain for a while. Her father was reluctant, telling her that without a blessing, managing a domain would be difficult. Sarashina agreed it was a drawback, but she still wanted to learn how to manage one, especially since she was getting married soon. She didn't want to be called the powerless queen next to Lord Solatik. Her father asked if she had really been thinking that deeply about it, suggesting instead that he increase her tuition hours and broaden her fields of study. He told her that if she did go to the domain, neither he nor her mother could be by her side. But Sari pleaded with her father to let her go. Eventually, her father gave in after much begging. He suggested the second district but then hesitated, worried about the conditions. Sarashina was confused by what he meant by conditions, and her father led her away to show her something. He pulled a book from his library, and to Sarashina's surprise, the book opened up the entire wall, revealing a secret room. There was nothing but a desk and a chair in the hidden room, but inside the desk was a small jewelry box. Sarashina's father unlocked it and pulled out a seed. It was the seed of the Grand Tree. He handed it to Sarashina, who looked at it carefully. It was the first time she had ever seen a seed. In the game, they always started with a sapling. She couldn't believe it when her father handed it to her. He told her that if she could succeed, the domain would remain under her care going forward. He suggested she plant it in the second district and make it bloom within half a year. With the god's blessings, the seed could bloom as soon as a month or as late as 6 months. With spirit blessings, it was said to bloom within that time frame. But each domain had one and only one grand tree planted. For someone like Sarashina, making the flower bloom within half a year seemed impossible. She didn't even know if it would sprout, but she knew she needed to try, and if she used the knowledge from the game, maybe she could make it bloom even without a blessing. She told her father she understood. She would, without fail, make the flower bloom. Meanwhile, Mr. Hanley showed Hisui around the secondary residence in the royal capital. He explained that it was where the family lived due to the master's work and circumstances. The main residence was in the capital city of the territory, Harmel. Mr. Hanley remembered how Hisui had seen the main residence and told him that the reason this place felt smaller must have been because he had seen the main one first. He showed Hisui to his room, and when Hisui learned that he had his own space, his eyes lit up. An entire room just for him and Toy. He jumped onto the bed, which even had a little dog bed next to it for Toy. They were both thrilled and thanked Mr. Hanley for everything. Mr. Hanley corrected him, instructing him to say "thank you very much" in a formal tone. Hisui copied him and was applauded for getting the hang of things. Mr. Hanley recognized that they must both be very tired today, so etiquette training could begin tomorrow. He waved Toy and Hisui off, though he was tempted to give Toy a big hug. When he left, Hisui bounced back onto his bed. He was so happy to be in a warm, safe place with no danger of the house collapsing in rainstorms. No cold, no hunger. He knew he needed to thank Lady Seri again for hiring him, but of course he remembered overhearing Solatik's warning to Sarishina, how he told her not to get too close to Hisui, and that a boy like him wasn't fit to be a butler. Hisui knew he had a lot to prove, but he didn't want to get Sarishina in trouble either. All he could do was take his studies and training seriously. Sarishina had saved him and Toy, so he needed to give it his all for her. He told Toy his plans, and Toy woofed supportively. When Sarishina returned, she told Hisui how she had discussed the territory with her father and had been entrusted with the 2nd District. Hisui asked if she really meant the 2nd District, before awkwardly wondering if it was too late to ask her father to change it. Sarishina asked if something was wrong with that district, but Hisui told her it wasn't anything bad, just that there was only one tiny village there, and it had only recently been formed. Apparently, some people from the slums in Harmel had moved out and started a small village. Sarishina looked shocked to hear that Harmel had slums in the first place, and Hisui reminded her that he was from a slum too. It wasn't far from Harmel town, only about an hour by carriage. Sarishina thought about how her father was too busy, so he probably couldn't manage the village himself. If a child was born there, they would also need to conduct a blessing ceremony. She suggested they first relocate their base to the Harmel mansion, and Hisui asked if it would be difficult to have a mansion in such a small village. Sarishina knew it would be a challenge, but she eventually hoped to have her own residence in the 2nd District. Of course it would be difficult. They would lack both materials and manpower. Maybe the best first step would be to build a distribution network. Sarishina told Hisui that even if they built a residence, they couldn't just live there alone. They would need servants and maids too. She quickly realized that there was a mountain of issues. Hisui made Sarishina touch grass, asking why she couldn't just use the maid she already had. Sarishina explained that Anna was employed by her father, so she couldn't just take her away. Besides, she needed to find her own maid. Otherwise, she would never be independent. Hisui handed her a plate, and Sarishina smiled at his mannerisms. Hisui told her he was trying to improve his speech, and Sarishina teased that he still had a long way to go. She sipped her tea and suggested they report the situation in the village to her father. Meanwhile, 2 men were digging up their field, exhausted from the laborious work. An old man approached and picked up a handful of soil. As he thought, the soil wouldn't absorb water, only stones came out. He sighed, realizing the land really lacked nutrients. He thought it would be peaceful living in an uninhabited land, but there was a reason no one was here. One of the men stood, smiling regardless. He told the old man he was heading into town with Leo and the others again tomorrow for more supplies. The old man smiled back, apologizing for always causing trouble. The young man told him that thanks to him holding everything together, they had survived the past month and they were grateful. The old man chuckled, saying the young man had a silver tongue. But if they couldn't grow crops, they wouldn't survive much longer. Just then, they saw a carriage pull up. All 3 looked at it in confusion. Inside the carriage, Hisui and Suna discussed their first impressions of the place. Hisui had heard that this area had better security than the slums in town, but just in case, he would still carry Sarishina's belongings to prevent theft. Sarishina thanked him and Hisui stepped out first. Sarishina knew that if things went well, maybe they would be allowed to stay in this village after being expelled. All the more reason to make this village thrive. The moment she stepped out, Sarishina introduced herself to the curious onlookers. She told them it was a pleasure to meet them, and that she would like to meet the person who oversaw the village. The old man approached and asked if she was a Linkart. Sarishina confirmed that she was, the daughter of Marquis Beisel Linkart, who governed the territory. She bowed, and the old man was stunned to see the Marquis's daughter in person. He explained that he was the one managing things around there, introducing himself as Anton. He gathered everyone around to introduce themselves. The young man from before introduced himself as Guts, and his job was mainly building houses and farming. The younger boy introduced himself as Leo, and the 2 girls were Odette and Sophie. There were also a few young children, Giselle, Maurice, and Nina. Nina was introduced as the one who prepared meals. Sarishina smiled in delight, bending down to speak to the kids. She told them how admirable it was that they had food supplies. Anton asked Sarishina nervously if she was upset that they had built houses here without permission. but of course she was fine with it. She explained that her father had recently entrusted her with this land. Anton suggested they head inside to talk more and led her to a simple cabin. Sarashina thanked them for their kindness. Anton instructed her to take a seat as he poured her a drink. He mentioned that he had heard rumors that the Marquise's daughter never left the mansion because she lacked divine blessings. He handed her the tea, which she gratefully accepted. Then Anton asked what exactly she meant by being entrusted with the second district. Sarashina knew she needed to be direct with the older gentleman. She told him she wanted to grow a sacred tree in the village and manage it as the acting lord. Anton asked if she was officially recognizing the place as a proper village, and she confirmed that she was. Anton's eyes widened, and he told her how honored they were. He collapsed to his knees, bowing. He explained that they were few in number and not much help, but they were willing to do whatever they could. Sarashina smiled, knowing these people simply wanted to protect their home. Even if it was step by step, she would do her best to be recognized as the acting lord. And she told Anton how much she was looking forward to working with him. She asked him to guide her so she could learn everything about the village. Anton explained that there were 7 adults in the village, 2 of whom were women. There were 7 children, both boys and girls. All were from the slums of Harmil and had no blood relations. Sarashina explained to Anton that she would like to plant the sacred tree in the center of the village. She asked if that would be all right, and Anton was more than happy. He took her outside and pointed out the center. The others gathered around as Sarashina announced that she would plant the seed. Of course, the event was more nerve-wracking than it seemed. Sarashina told Hisui that she was getting nervous. She knew she needed to relax. Just aiming for sprouting first would be fine. She asked Hisui to pass her the seed, and he did so. Toy ran around a specific spot and Sarashina thanked him. She knew she could plant the seed right there. She gently held it between her fingers, feeling the pressure. The villagers were surprised to witness the planting of a sacred tree. They wondered if this was the first step toward improving their village. Sarashina got onto her knees and dug a hole in the soft ground. She knew it would be fine, that the tree would grow strong. Sacred trees grew based on the planter's influence. She gently covered the seed with soil, and Odette passed her a watering can. Sarashina thanked her and watered the soil. Then something unexpected happened. The villagers gathered closer, sensing something, and were shocked to see that the seed had sprouted. The villagers were blown away. The sacred tree had truly grown, defying all laws of nature. Anton told Sarashina he couldn't believe he was witnessing it with his own eyes. Sarashina looked closely at the seed, knowing that germination should have taken at least a few days. How did it sprout so quickly? Was it the power of the sacred tree? One of the children asked if this meant they could start growing vegetables, and Sarashina knew she needed to gather everyone together. There she introduced herself again as Sarashina Link. She announced that starting from today, she would serve as the acting lord of the second district. Sarashina explained that, as the villagers had seen, the seed had sprouted successfully, so as a result, the sacred tree would surely protect and enrich the village. She called for everyone to grow together, with the sacred tree. The villagers listened and smiled. Sarashina then turned to Guts and told him that she would like to go buy some crop seedlings tomorrow. Guts insisted that he didn't want to impose on her, but Sarashina was more than happy to help, for the sake of the village. Guts bowed and thanked Sarashina for her kindness. He warned her that the soil in the area was poor, and he was worried nothing would grow at all. Sarashina reassured him it would be fine. Now that the sacred tree was planted, the other crops should follow. Guts smiled at the hopeful news. Sarashina announced that she would also like a house to serve as a base of operations for the village, and the men agreed they would prepare one for her. Guts suggested a nearby area that got a lot of sunlight and had a clear view of the sacred tree. Sarashina went to the carriage and asked Hisui if he could give her pouch to Mr. Anton. It contained money to have the base built. She asked Hisui if he thought it was enough, and he reassured her that it was more than enough. To his surprise, Sarashina entrusted the money to him, telling him he could use it with his own initiative. Hisui was taken aback that Sarashina trusted him so much already, and he asked if she was really fine with him being responsible for the money. Sarashina smiled, telling him that he was her butler after all. Hisui smiled and promised he would take care of it. He instructed Toy to stay by Sarashina's side and keep her safe. Sarashina smiled at her new dependable bodyguard. Hisui set off to consult with Mr. Anton. When he left, Sarashina remained in the carriage and knew it was time to activate the Asgard system. A screen flashed in front of her and she read through what she needed to do. She decided to take her time raising the sacred tree's level, aiming to acquire skills through the crop growing quests first. There were skills that unlocked with the tree's level, some through quests, and some through romantic events. There was also a quest to increase the number of villagers, so Sarashina knew she needed to keep developing the area. The screen read that there were 15 villagers already, so that must have meant Hisui and Toy were included, right? Sarashina read through the details and was surprised to see Toy listed as the guardian divine beast. She had thought Toy was simply Hisui's companion, but now he was officially by her side. She was so happy that Toy loved her enough to do that, and she couldn't resist attacking him with hugs and pets. Not only had Toy become the guardian deity of the territory, but Sarashina had practically memorized all the unlock conditions for the Asgard system. They were practically invincible. Hisui soon returned, telling Sarashina that he had made the requests. Sarashina smiled and thanked him for his work. She had turned off the system just in time. It was then that Hisui asked if Lady Sarashina was truly a refined young lady, and Sarashina nervously asked if he had overheard her monologue just now. She stuttered in embarrassment, explaining that she was simply quite active, and that might be the impression she gave. Hisui told her it wasn't normal for a noble lady to want to manage a territory by herself, and Sarashina realized he was starting to get suspicious of her. Sarashina quickly changed the subject, explaining that she wanted to plant crop seeds first and secure food for everyone. Hisui agreed that it would be the best first step. They gazed out the window together, excited for what they were about to build. Back at the mansion, Solatique arrived, confused about where Sarashina had gone. Anna apologized, explaining that Sarashina was excited about being recently entrusted with a territory by her father. Her gown had arrived for the royal gathering, and Anna was handed the package to deliver to Sarashina. Solatique also gave her a bouquet of flowers, and Anna told him she was sure Sarashina would be delighted. Hisui and Sarashina headed out to town, and Hisui told her that her initiative was quite surprising. She took them to Harmil to buy potato seeds, as well as to look for clothes that were more comfortable for farming. It was inconvenient for her to stay in a dress all the time. Hisui asked if she was really planning on doing farm work, and Sarashina announced that she wanted to work alongside the villagers. She headed to the clothing stalls first, where she was greeted by a saleswoman. Sarashina explained that she was searching for clothes appropriate for farming, and the woman led her to a separate section. There, Sarashina asked Hisui which clothes he thought looked best, but Hisui admitted he was the worst person to ask when it came to fashion advice. Sarashina picked something out, and Hisui told her it looked nice. He searched through the racks, trying to find a longer skirt. The saleswoman offered to show her to the changing room, and Sarashina thanked her. A few moments passed, and Sarashina changed into a pretty but practical robe dress. She asked Hisui what he thought, and Hisui said it looked beautiful. Sarashina smiled and thanked him, though she was embarrassed by his compliment. They bought the dresses, and Sarashina decided to keep one on for the day. The next stop was to find the seedlings. They bought a few crates, and Sarashina offered to carry a couple, but Hisui didn't let her. He told her it wasn't the job of a feudal lord. Still, Sarashina insisted, and Hisui knew she would eventually get her way, so he passed her a single tray to carry herself. They made their way back to the village and greeted the villagers with a good morning. Anton thanked Sarashina for what she brought and announced that there had been a change in the soil. It was now super soft. Anton asked if this was really due to the power of the great tree, and Sarashina told him he was right. The great tree had blessed them with its bounty and was watching over them. She gathered everyone to begin planting the seedlings across the field. The kids smiled and eagerly took the trays, sharing the responsibility. The villagers and Sarashina worked all day, gently placing the plants into the soil. After a while, Sarashina was informed that the great tree's level had increased to 2. Hisui looked over to see Sarashina planting flowers too. She explained that it was something she wanted to do, along with planting the crops. She realized that only she could hear the announcements of the village leveling up. When the great tree reaches level 2, sweet nectar is unlocked and its scent attracts butterflies. As the skill level increases, bees, birds, and even beasts will come. In this world, honey was a luxury item, so if they could do beekeeping, the village would prosper. Sarashina could only hope that the level would rise quickly. It was then that the children spotted something in the sky. It was a butterfly. Back at the mansion, Prince Solatique was called by his butler, who asked him where he was heading. Solatique knew the venue was in the other direction, but it was his duty to escort his precious fiancée. He told the butler he was off and that he was also planning on stopping by the flower shop. His butler smiled, watching the prince hurry off. He knew Solatique was deeply devoted to Lady Sarashina. Meanwhile, Sarashina got dressed in a stunning gown. Anna helped her with her hair and makeup, telling her how beautiful she looked. She was sure Prince Solatique would be delighted too. Today was the Feast of Abundance. It was held at the royal castle and would feature the heroine as well. In other words, it was a key turning point in the story. Sarashina knew she needed to play the villainess properly today. There was a knock and Hisui entered, telling her that the carriage was waiting. He handed her a huge bouquet of flowers, saying it was from Prince Solatique. Sarashina smiled, knowing that Solatique was such a genuine soul. He sent her something even though they were about to meet. Even though his affection level for the heroine must have gone up a lot, he still gave her plenty of gifts. She then tried to remember what kind of bouquet he gave the heroine. Was it another mixed bouquet like last time? Sarashina was greeted by Mr. Hanley when she walked out of her room. He announced that the prince was waiting for her at the entrance. Sarashina was surprised to hear this, and Mr. Hanley asked Hisui if he had told her as instructed. Hisui admitted he didn't, and Mr. Hanley shot him a look. Sarashina looked down, telling Anna that the prince didn't have to come all this way. But Anna reminded her that escorting a lady was a man's job, so she should just let him do it. Not to mention, it was clear the prince cherished Sarashina greatly. Sarashina walked down the stairs to see the prince looking very handsome in his attire. She knew she had nothing to lose. It's not like she wasn't going to end up hated and abandoned after all. Solatique looked just as happy to see her. Sarashina curtsied, apologizing for keeping him waiting. But Solatique smoothly told her he would wait forever if it meant seeing Sari. He complimented her dress, and Sarashina told him he looked wonderful too. In fact, she was lost for words over how nice he looked. The couple arrived at the palace and soon realized that this year's harvest was bountiful. The wine and food were out of this world. Guests gathered around Prince Solatique, thanking him for their invitation and saying how much they were looking forward to it. It was then that someone caught Sarashina's attention. It was the heroine. As expected, she was very pretty, but Sarashina knew she couldn't leave until the greetings were over. She expected Solatique to go and approach her, but he didn't. Was it because Sarashina was there? Sarashina told the prince she wanted to get some air, noticing how tired he looked. Sarashina knew if she went outside here, the heroine could approach him. Although Sarashina felt bad taking advantage of his kindness for their sake, the obstacle had to step aside. Solatique offered to go with her, but Sarashina insisted that there were still dozens of people waiting to greet him, and that she was more than fine going alone. But Solatique told her he couldn't just leave her, especially when she appeared troubled. So the two made their way to the garden, and Sarashina looked up at the stars. Solatique mentioned how he heard from her father that she had been looking after District 2. He curiously asked if it was true that it was made up mostly of people from the slums, or if it was dangerous. Sarashina told him that they were good people and that they were already making progress growing vegetables. She also hoped to hold a festival once the harvest came. Solatique told Sarashina that it sounded great. Sarashina mentioned how she thought the villagers just wanted to live normal lives, so there was nothing for him to worry about. Solatique smiled, telling her that he would love to come and visit someday. But Sarashina let him know there wasn't much there at the moment. It might take a few years until it grows. Solatique didn't mind. He wanted to see his fiancée working hard. Sarashina couldn't help but look into his eyes. She wondered what would happen if the heroine saw them together. Would it interfere with anything? Sarashina suggested that Solatique go back inside since it was getting cold. But of course Solatique insisted on staying with Sari. Her plan wasn't working, and she needed to find a way to keep him from meeting the heroine. And then she heard a voice. It was the heroine. The heroine was named Lady Melia. She looked just like the typical heroine in a story, super pretty and innocent looking, and she was calling Solatique's name. Solatique got up to greet her, asking if she felt better. Sarashina could only hope there was no weird misunderstanding. She got up and introduced herself, and Melia did the same. Solatique explained that Lady Melia had been recovering at her maternal family's estate until recently. He told Sarashina that Melia didn't have many close friends, so he asked Sarashina to take care of her. Sarashina agreed, and Melia smiled. She explained that she wasn't used to these kinds of gatherings, so she brought a drink with her. Sarashina chuckled, telling her if she ever needed someone to talk to, she would be happy to listen any time. It was then that Melia asked Solatique if he could dance with her. Solatique reluctantly looked at Sarashina, but she ushered him to go ahead. She would rest here in the meantime. Melia thanked Sarashina eagerly, but Solatique was still reluctant. He didn't want to leave Sari alone when she was unwell. Sarashina insisted she was feeling better and instead suggested that they all head back together. That way, Melia would feel more at ease. Melia took Sarashina's hand, but she stumbled, spilling her drink all over her dress. Solatique asked his maids to take Lady Melia to the guest room and prepare her a new dress. Sarashina had to think quickly, and it turned out she was the one who made the drink spill. She didn't intend on getting herself splashed too, but with this, the heroine and Prince Solatique would be alone in the guest room. But to her horror, Solatique swept her up in his arms and declared that he would be taking Sari with him. Of course, considering how the game was supposed to go, this was a pretty big issue for Sari. Back in the mansion, Hisui gazed out the window, wondering how Lady Sari's night was going. He imagined her dancing, or maybe even eating something delicious. He wondered what the banquet food was like. Back at the banquet, Solatique asked Melia if she was all right. Melia told him she was fine, just surprised because she was suddenly pulled. Solatique was shocked that Sarashina acted so roughly toward Lady Melia. It was not something he signed up for. And in that moment, he turned to Sarashina and told her straight that she was not suitable to be his fiancée. And like that, the engagement was called off. Sarashina knew that this was fate. The Villainess should have been expelled, leading to the happy ending. But then, reality hit. And that was not what happened at all. Instead, Sarashina found herself in Solatik's arms, being carried romantically through the party. Despite Sarashina insisting that she could walk by herself, Solatik told her there was no need to walk. Sarashina knew there was a need though. She couldn't have the heroine misunderstanding her. If her favorability dropped, she would be sentenced to death. Sarashina asked Solatik if it was really okay not bringing Melia, but Solatik told her he left it in the maid's hands. His fiancée was more important. Sarashina couldn't help but get flustered, especially when Solatik ordered a new dress. He asked Sarashina if she was feeling cold, considering the drink spilled on her too. Sarashina insisted she was fine, that she only got a little wet, but she was sorry for staining the dress he got for her. Solatik told her not to worry about it. Sarashina admired the roses displayed in the room, and Solatik asked if she liked them. Sarashina smiled and told him she did. She asked if he was in charge of decorating the guest room, but he corrected her, saying it was her room. Sarashina smiled, realizing they were for her. She promised to take good care of them, but Solatik could still sense her hesitation, and he asked if she even liked roses, otherwise he could return them. But Sarashina told him that wasn't true. Now that she thought about it, the guest room she used always had roses, and all the bouquets she received were roses too. Sarashina couldn't help but ask if Solatik ever gave flowers to others. Solatik explained he needed to because of his position, but roses were only for Sari. He didn't want to give anyone else roses. And then Sari realized, she thought he just didn't want to bother thinking about the different types of flowers. Solatik then brought up the day he went to the florist in town. He told Sarashina how they left the arrangement styles to the staff and they had great taste. He told her that Lady Melia was happy too. Sarashina asked him if he often gave flowers to Lady Melia, and Solatik told her no. It was just that they met by chance and he gave her a bouquet as thanks. Sarashina asked what he meant by as thanks, and he explained that Melia actually helped him find a gift to give to Sari. He sank into his hands, realizing he ruined his own surprise. It turned out that Lady Melia recommended a popular ornament shop to him, and the flowers were a thank you for that. He asked her to keep it a secret from Sari too, but of course he ruined the surprise. Sarashina could only think that it was a pity that day wasn't a date. This entire night really was not going to plan. Sarashina looked into Solatik's eyes and told him that she was happy someone cared this much. She told him not to worry about ruining the surprise. Solatik told her that next time he wanted to go to the same florist with her. There was a knock at the door, and a new dress was prepared. Solatik thanked the maids and told Sarashina he would wait here while she changed. So Sarashina went to get ready. It was then that she noticed the dress. It was the same dress the heroine wore. Sarashina was too stunned to speak. She genuinely thought this would be impossible. The maid noticed her apprehension and asked if Sarashina didn't like it, but Sarashina told her it was so beautiful she was only surprised. The maid smiled, telling Sari she was glad she was satisfied. In the game, the heroine definitely wore it, and Sarashina didn't understand how this came to be. She put the dress on and looked at herself in the mirror. It was lovely. The maids left Sarashina alone in the room, and she could only exhale sharply, wondering how things had gone so not according to plan. She knew she needed to hang in there. Not long now until she could return to the village, back where everything was predictable and within her control. She opened the door, mustering up the courage to face everyone. Of course, she needed to face Solatik first. He asked her if she was okay, and Sarashina told him she was fine. He then took her hair gently and told her how beautiful she looked. Of course, her dress from earlier was lovely, but this look suited her well too. He asked if she was ready to return to the party, and Sarashina agreed. But to her surprise, Solatik announced they could leave early tonight. And as expected, the entire crowd's attention was drawn to Sarashina. Sarashina looked down in embarrassment as Lady Melia approached her. Sarashina smiled and told Melia she was pleased she was unharmed before apologizing for her carelessness. Melia insisted she was fine with a smile, and Sarashina took the opportunity to make what could be taken as an improved suggestion. She asked Solatik if she could dance with him, and Solatik said yes quicker than lightning. He took Sarashina's hands and asked if she would do him the honor. So Sarashina excused herself from Lady Melia, who acted unbothered. But you could see her face drop when Sarashina walked hand in hand with the prince. Sarashina tried to savor the moment. She knew it would be sad if Solatik did end up with Melia, but ultimately everything was out of her control now. As they danced, Solatik gazed lovingly into Sarashina's eyes. In that moment, she knew it would be fine. Her heart was ready. Solatik and Sarashina danced the night away. As expected of the prince, his movements were perfected, and Sarashina was a great dancer too. Sarashina and Solatik attracted a few admiring eyes as they moved gracefully around the ballroom. However, it was clear that they also caught the attention of a few jealous onlookers, who criticized Sarashina for being too submissive in the dance, saying Solatik was the one doing all the leading. Sarashina could hear them, and of course she began to fret over whether it was true or not. But Solatik quickly reassured her, letting her know that her steps were truly light and feminine. He told her that he loved dancing with her. Sarashina smiled and told him she loved dancing with him too. Before meeting the heroine and even now, Solatik's attitude had not shifted in the slightest. In the game, it was pretty obvious how he felt toward Melia, unless he was only pretending he still liked Sarashina now. Sarashina told herself that if the engagement was broken, then she certainly wouldn't be dancing with him right now. Solatik noticed Sarashina zoning out and asked if she was tired. Sarashina told him she was okay. She was just worried about spilling her champagne on Lady Melia. Sarashina requested that Solatik go and speak with her, as it would be nice for the crown prince to express some words of concern. Not to mention, Melia was in clear view staring at the couple. Sarashina admitted that she felt sorry for making Solatik apologize in her place, but Solatik told her it was fine. In his head, he was just happy that Sari relied on him. But Sarashina had other thoughts. This would be an opportunity for the heroine and the love interest to dance without guilt. Sarashina watched her fiancé walk toward Melia and take her hand. But Melia was an awful dancer, stepping on Solatik's feet and everything. Of course, the crowd was even more critical of Melia compared to Sarashina. Sarashina wondered if it was a good thing Melia didn't know how to dance. Men did like to teach, after all. And just as it seemed like they were making progress, Melia fell entirely to the floor, completely ruining what Sari thought would be the perfect romantic moment between the heroine and the hero. It was then that the penny dropped that the dance was not going to continue. A couple of maids helped Melia up, and Sarashina rushed over to ask if she was all right. Melia apologized, but Sarashina told her that it was a difficult dance anyway. One of the maids offered to guide Melia to the restroom to get cleaned up, and Solatik asked Sarashina if they should accompany her. Sarashina apologized for asking Solatik to take Melia's hand, calling him a gentleman regardless. Solatik chuckled, telling her Melia fortunately didn't step too hard on his toes. Sarashina knew she needed to think fast before telling Solatik that she was not feeling too well today. Solatik apologized like crazy, telling her they could go home immediately, but Sarashina told him no, she would be happy to go home alone. She told Solatik that Lady Melia must be heartbroken, so she asked Solatik to go and cheer her up. Solatik told her that he would if that was what she wanted, and Sarashina thanked him for listening. She knew that by taking care of Melia, Solatik must begin to feel something toward her, just as the game was meant to go. So Sarashina reached home, and she was welcomed back by Hisui. Hisui asked if Solatik was with her, but Sarashina told him that Solatik was actually concerned about a woman named Lady Melia. Hisui wondered what she meant, as Sarashina continued to say that they danced. Lady Melia fell, so Solatik accompanied her. Of course, Hisui saw nothing but red flags, asking Sarashina if she was really fine with that, but Sarashina let him know it was all because she requested it. Sarashina asked Hisui how he was settling in. She also heard that Anna had been praising him. She asked if he had been reading much, and Hisui told her he was still learning. He admitted that he wanted to study in his spare time to repay the favor. He didn't want to embarrass Lady Sarashina over his lack of studying. Sarashina smiled, noticing how responsible Hisui was for his age. Anna passed Hisui a tray of tea, and Hisui explained that Sarashina was tired and would be going to bed soon. Anna smiled and told Hisui they would enjoy the tea themselves then. Meanwhile, Sarashina had changed into her nightgown and collapsed onto her bed. She smiled, thinking that from tomorrow she would be free again, and she could continue working on the village. Leveling up the great tree and acquiring skills was important, but she wanted to raise skill levels quickly. She activated the gaming system, which informed her that in order to level up Sweet Nectar, she needed to plant various kinds of flowers and grow enough of each to make a small flower field. Sarashina thought to herself that if she were to do that, the crop yield would decrease, and the blessing of abundance couldn't level up. But once it reached level 2, bees would gather around the great tree, enabling beekeeping. If they could get a lot, they could make it a village specialty. She also needed to think of a village name. Once approved by her father and the king, it would then be on the map. Sarashina shut down the tablet, knowing there was still so much to work on, and of course, she still had the festival to think about. Sarashina arrived at the village the following day and she was greeted by Anton. The villagers bowed as Sarashina approached. Sarashina could see immediately how well the potatoes had grown, and they would be ready for harvest in a few days, something she was really looking forward to. Not to mention the flowers. Nina brought some flowers to plant around the great tree, and Sarashina smiled, offering that they work on them together. But Sarashina then realized that the family was already working on something, which ended up being a basket of vines. Toy bolted through the field and Hisui ran after him so he wouldn't destroy all the work he did. It was then announced that the Sweet Nectar skill level had reached 2, with bees and butterflies gathering in the field. Sarashina smiled, but of course the villagers freaked out. Sarashina told them not to be scared. The bees were called flower bees. They didn't sting humans or animals. Guts realized it was true. The bees were only flying around but not attacking. Flower bees gathered nectar from flowers to make honey, and if you provided flowers, coexistence was possible too. Odette asked if Sarashina meant that sweet stuff when she mentioned honey. And Sarashina smiled and said yes. But in order to harvest honey, they needed a beehive first. Sarashina told the villagers that if they built one quickly, honey could be harvested in as little as 3 days, in the game world. Hisui was shocked at how quickly they could have honey, and the villagers immediately began cracking on with the beehive. Guts showed Sarashina some lumber and she told him it would work before asking if it was possible to build 5 beehives. They needed square boxes first, lined with mesh. That way the bees could build combs where the honey would be stored. Guts smiled and began the job. Hisui admitted he was really looking forward to the honey. Sari rubbed her irritated skin as Hisui asked if her mark still hadn't disappeared. He advised her to leave it alone, saying it would probably be fine once they reached the village. Hisui chuckled, realizing Sarashina had fallen asleep at her desk. She was up super late thinking of names for the village. Hisui asked if that meant she had come up with a good idea, and Sarashina asked for his input. Hisui suggested Sarashina Village, and Sari soon realized that Hisui might have even less sense than her. She definitely couldn't name it after herself. Meanwhile, Melia's maids gathered outside her bedroom concerned for their lady. They knocked, and Melia could be seen absent-mindedly gazing out the window. Until recently, she was frail and couldn't go outside. Her only friends were the guard knights. Even so, Melia never complained and always smiled. Her maids discussed how she was supposedly teased at the ball after tripping while dancing. She wasn't injured, and she was pleased anyway that she got to dance with the prince and was even escorted home afterward. The maids wondered what was going on in Melia's head, who seemed so out of it that no one knew what her next move would be. The truth was, Melia wanted to dance more with Solatik. She wanted to talk to him more. If she were Sarashina, she would never leave his side. Melia turned to her assistant Sarah, asking why Sarashina wasn't often with Prince Solatik. Sarah explained that people often pointed fingers at Sarashina, so she could only attend certain balls, and was mostly kept out of the public eye. When Melia asked why, Sarah revealed that it was because Sarashina did not have a blessing. Of course, that meant most people were against her being the prince's fiancée. But regardless, her father entrusted a territory to Sarashina. At the village, the beehives were ready and 3 days passed, which meant it was finally time for honey. The villagers gathered excitedly as Guts was brave enough to open the hives. He thoroughly trusted Sarashina's words that the bees were friendly, so he opened one up, only to be met by an army of bees. They managed to get the crates out and pour the delicious golden honey into jars. Hisui helped out, asking if Guts was okay after the scary encounter. Sarashina smiled, and Hisui noticed that her marks from sleeping on her desk had also faded. Odette noticed Sarashina touching her cheek and asked if she was fine, and Sarashina quickly announced that she was thinking of a name for the village, but she would need everyone's opinion too. The villagers looked at her, astounded. They hadn't even considered naming the village. Sophie suggested Nino Village, and the kids suggested Honey Village or Potato Village. Anton suggested using Sarashina's name. Sarashina turned to Hisui and asked if he had any good ideas, and he suggested Saren. Sarashina was flustered and suggested it might be better to capture a feature of the space instead, but the villagers loved the name and insisted on using Saren Village. Sarashina blushed and knew she had to let the villagers have their way. So it was confirmed, the village was called Saren. In that moment, the tree grew considerably, as did the quest, territory naming, unlocking a new skill. Guts announced that the leaves were already starting to turn yellow. Sarashina began to worry. Did this mean the plants were lacking nutrients? But Guts told her that potatoes are harvested when the flowers wither and the leaves start turning yellow. Sarashina smiled and suggested they harvest the potatoes tomorrow. Hisui announced that they had finished gathering the honey and decided to begin preparing. Sarashina asked Odette if she wanted to help cook up some pancakes. So they began, and the villagers had sadly never had pancakes before, although they had heard how delicious they were. Sarashina smiled as she taught Odette how to place the batter on the stove and flip them perfectly. The first pancake was done, and Sarashina suggested they try it. Eventually, food was served, and Odette and Sarashina topped the pancakes with honey. The villagers gathered around and ate in the fields, grateful for the delicious food. Anton announced that he never imagined he could eat something this good at his age, all thanks to Lady Sarashina. But Sarashina let him know it was thanks to everyone working hard together. Even Toy was excited to try a little. Hisui told Sarashina that he was glad everyone was happy, and Sarashina agreed. Maybe being a villainous young lady wasn't so bad after all. Night fell in the village, and Sophie and Odette couldn't stop thinking about how delicious the pancakes were. But they knew today was a special treat. They were far too conscious about their health and weight to let themselves imagine eating pancakes every day. Of course, tomorrow would be the potato harvest, so they had that to look forward to as well. Suddenly, there was a strange sound, and the girls sensed some activity outside their house. Odette looked out of the window and saw that someone was there. She called Sophie over, wondering who could be visiting at such a late hour. Inside the carriage was Lady Melia. Night passed and morning came, marking the day of the potato harvest. The villagers gathered around excitedly. Hisui laughed, asking if Sarashina was going to get her hands dirty as well. It turned out that after Sarashina had left the other day, an unexpected guest had arrived. It was supposedly a person named Sarah, asking one question after another. When Guts told Sarah that Lady Sarashina wasn't around, she left immediately. Sarashina wondered who she was. She hadn't heard of anyone planning to visit, and the guest should have at least informed her beforehand if they were coming. Guts told her that the guest mentioned she would return another day. Sarashina pulled out a potato and quickly realized how tough it was. It felt like she was already cramping up from the work. Meanwhile, the men got through several patches faster than Sarashina could catch her breath. She chuckled, noticing she had already reached her limit after picking out only 3 potatoes. Hisui told her sternly that this was no job for a lady like her and that she didn't need to do it. Mr. Guts was super impressive, doing almost the entire harvest alone. He couldn't help during the honey harvesting, so he was probably trying his best to make up for it. From afar, Anton called to Guts, telling him not to overdo it. Sarashina also told him to be careful. She wandered up to Toy and petted him, thanking him for all his hard work too. Sarashina thought it might be time to focus on cooking. She linked up with Odette, who seemed troubled. Sarashina asked if she was okay or if she was feeling unwell. Odette admitted she actually felt kind of happy. The fields and beekeeping were going well, the villagers could eat delicious food, and she could enjoy life with everyone. Feeling happy made her so joyful that she cried. Odette thanked Sarashina for transforming the space. Of course, Sarashina was overjoyed by Odette's words. Hearing her say that made Sarashina feel truly pleased too. Meanwhile, a strange carriage rode through the land. Inside was Lady Melia and Sarah, ready for a second round of harassing Sarashina. They realized that going to the village late at night was probably not a good idea, and it might be better to visit during the day. Melia asked if Sarashina would be there today, and Anna told her that she was harvesting potatoes, so she would probably be around during the day. Melia told Anna how Sarashina was growing a large tree and that buds were already beginning to sprout. She asked Sarah if it was really possible for plants to sprout without blessings, and Sarah admitted that she didn't think it was possible. Sarah looked out of the window, appearing as lost as ever. She declared that she also wanted her own large tree. Sarah looked at Melia, unsure what to say. Melia wanted to ask Lady Sarashina about the tree and also about her true feelings for Lord Solatique. She remembered that night and thought that by growing a splendid large tree with the power of the god of fertility, she could enrich the territory. Then, of course, Lord Solatique would choose her for the sake of the country. Melia held her hands together anxiously. Meanwhile, at the village, lunch was served. It consisted of a delicious plate of potatoes with butter and chips. Thanks to Mr. Guts, they harvested a lot so they could still make more. The villagers gathered around the new table they had constructed, excited to eat after a long, hard day of work. Sarashina then heard something, a familiar voice. She turned around to see Lady Melia. Lady Melia was waving and smiling like she had just come across a long-lost best friend. Talk about fake, she was contemplating stealing Sarashina's man a few seconds ago. Sarashina scrambled to her feet and welcomed Melia warmly. She asked her what she was doing there, and Sarashina told her she had just made some potatoes and chips from the recent harvest. She offered some to Melia, who smelled the freshly made chips. Of course, she couldn't resist, despite Sarah telling her not to eat something she hadn't seen prepared herself. Melia was blown away by how delicious the chips were. She asked Sarashina if there was any chance she could have another. Of course, Sarashina was kind as ever, offering as much as Melia liked. Melia was so distracted by the chips that she didn't have enough time to come up with an excuse for why she came to the village. So when Sarashina asked what brought her to the territory, she could only say that she had heard Sarashina was managing the land, so she came out of pure curiosity. She admitted that she was very surprised that the large tree had already grown so much, and the village management also seemed to be going smoothly, which was reassuring. Sarashina smiled, telling Melia that it was all thanks to everyone's contributions that she was able to get to this stage. It was then that Melia asked the big question, if she could also grow the large tree with Sarashina. Sarashina smiled awkwardly, asking Melia to repeat herself. Did she really just say that she wanted to grow the large tree together? Melia smiled with no shame and said yes. She told Sarashina that if someone with blessings like her joined, the tree would grow quicker, and of course that would only make everything better. Before Sarashina could say anything, Melia had already decided she was going to introduce herself to the villagers. She wandered over to them, introducing herself as Melia Saltamari, and explained that she had been granted blessings by the god of fertility, Frey. She continued to announce that with her blessings, this village would grow strong and prosperous. The villagers knew no better. They were blown away by Melia's words. Sarashina heard that anyone blessed by the gods admired the great tree. Even though Lady Melia had no ill intentions, to suddenly show up unannounced was one thing, but to want to be with the great tree was another. Why in the first place was she leaving Solatique to come here? Hisui asked Tsurushina if she was feeling okay, but Tsurushina's head was throbbing with stress. Tsurushina told Anton she wanted to sit down and have tea with Lady Melia and asked if it was possible to borrow a room. It was there that Lady Melia was formally introduced to the new village, Tezrin. Melia commented that she had heard it was a nameless village, but she thought it was lovely that it had the same resonance as Lady Tezrashina's name. She then asked if the village was already on the map. Tezrashina said no, but that they would be applying for that next. Melia mentioned that she heard from Solitique that the great tree was very precious and not something easily obtained. Tezrashina said yes, and Melia went silent. Tsurushina explained that the great tree of the village was a precious gift from her father, and she had no intention of growing it together with anyone else. Melia apologized, saying that she got carried away wanting to try growing her own tree. Tsurushina told Melia she knew she was blessed, so she understood her feelings, but if she knew what would happen if Melia and Solitique were to be married, Melia looked truly guilty, and she knew she should apologize. But what Melia blurted out next was completely out of the blue. She told Tsurushina she was in love with Solitique. Tsurushina and Hisui went silent. Of course Tsurushina already knew that, but it was annoying that Melia had blurted it out loud. She knew she technically could not say much, but Melia had left her with no choice. Tsurushina told Melia that she understood her feelings, but Solitique was her fiancé and he loved her. She firmly told Melia she would pretend she never said that, so she should put a lid on her feelings too. Of course it was harsh, but Tsurushina needed to put this girl in her place. She continued, saying that despite the two of them being close in age, they were not friendly. Tsurushina was the daughter of a marquis and also held the position of acting lord of the 2nd district. Of course Melia's straightforward nature might make her strong, but if she truly wished for Solitique's bride's position, she must study. Melia breathed out, saying yes. Tsurushina finished her lecture by instructing Melia not to come unannounced again. It was fine this time, but if she did it with anyone else, they might protest. Melia looked surprised to hear that, commenting on how Solitique never seemed to care. Tsurushina could only bite her lip. Lady Melia admitted that she felt like a clueless child and said she would take her leave for today. Even though Tsurushina was harsh, she was thankful to her. She told Tsurushina she would study harder to be worthy of Solitique. She smiled warmly. Tsurushina watched as she left. Even if it was just for show, Tsurushina needed Melia to control her feelings. Tsurushina made her way back to the villagers, apologizing for the excitement. She knew she should have asked for their opinion before outright rejecting Melia, but she could not accept it. If Melia was preoccupied with the great tree and did not progress with Lord Solitique, it would be a bad ending. And if she were executed, then what would happen to the village? The villagers were understanding, telling Tsurushina they accepted her as the lord of the territory. The girls commented that Melia was quite unsettling anyway. Tsurushina smiled, grateful that her people understood. A report came in for the 2nd district, and Tsurushina's father was told that Tsurushina was waiting in her study. The letter concerned Lady Melia of the Saltomarl Count family, and her father knew he needed to speak to Tsurushina first. If the issue could not be resolved, however, then she would need to give up her position and undergo queen education instead. Tsurushina updated him on what had happened in her village, how the flowers had attracted bees and how potatoes were currently growing, with the potential for other roots in the future. She smiled, hoping her father could try them someday. She also excitedly told him how they had decided on a name, Tezrin. It was all good news, but Tsurushina did have a request. She asked her father if he could approve Tezrin village as soon as possible, as she wanted to set up a stall with dishes using the potatoes harvested in the village. Her father looked down, telling Tsurushina he knew how hard the village had worked, so tomorrow they would start the procedures within the territory. From the day after tomorrow, she could act freely within the territory. Tsurushina smiled ear to ear, excitedly thanking her father. Regarding Lady Melia, Tsurushina had sorted it all out independently, and her father was beyond proud. His butler could not believe how Tsurushina, who felt like a baby just yesterday, had become so accomplished. Tsurushina woke up bright and early, stretching in the sunlight. Starting today, Tezrin village would be on the map, and notices would go out to each town so they could finally trade. Tsurushina knew that if they were going to sell potato dishes, it was the perfect time since they had harvested so many. She could not wait to go to the village. She knew that if anyone saw how much she was smiling, they would certainly be freaked out. She tried to compose herself but decided to go back to the privacy of her room to freak out in private. Of course Hisui saw the whole thing. At the village, Tsurushina was welcomed by Odette, who began to wash and pack the potatoes. Tsurushina complimented them on their impeccable work, but Toy was whimpering like crazy. Hisui could only guess it was because he wanted potatoes, and Tsurushina wondered if beasts were even allowed them. Toy began to drool, staring at the delicious spuds. Tsurushina asked Odette if Toy could have a boiled potato, and Odette took him away. Tsurushina announced that they would be setting up a food stall in Halmel today. The villagers were super excited, having never traded before. Tsurushina explained that this time they would be selling potato chips. They could bag them individually and sell them for 200 lus. The villagers thought it was a wonderful idea. Suddenly, Tsurushina heard an announcement that she had acquired a new skill. She remembered that you gain skills by offering harvested goods to the divine beasts. A stronger divine beast helps drive off harmful beasts that come to the village. She wanted to activate the system and check immediately what the skill was. She petted Toy, who was super pleased. Later on, she checked in with the clerk who arranged the stall rental. It included a magic stove, but it would cost 3,000 lus. Tereshina asked for one this time, and she was handed a ticket. When she left, the clerk complimented her on how elegant and refined she was. Her colleague let her know that she was actually a noble Lady Tereshina. At the stall, Tereshina began setting up. She attached a sign and laid out a few bags. Toy helped out, holding a sign around his neck. He made such an adorable mascot. Tereshina called out, advertising the potato chips from Tezrin village. Of course, this sparked some intrigued looks from people who had never heard of the village, nor potato chips. But unfortunately, no one was interested. Odette and Tereshina began to worry as Tereshina tried again. One person asked if the village was new, and said they had heard about it through a post at the office. Odette smiled, pleased that someone knew about the village. That alone made her super happy. She told the gentleman it was a Tezrin village specialty and that he should try a chip. The man was apprehensive, thinking they were too small and thin, not enough to fill him up. Tereshina urged him to just try for now. When he saw Tereshina, he immediately stuck his hand in before asking if she was a noble. He noticed her neat clothes and light hair, but then he asked if that meant she had no blessing. Tereshina looked down in disappointment. Before today, she had forgotten this feeling, and she began to wonder if she should stay at the front of the stall. But her people came to her defense, saying that she was the founder of Tezrin and that she provided them with jobs. It did not matter if she had a blessing or not. Odette added that Lady Tereshina kindly extended her hand to them when they could not even make a day's living. Tereshina was taken aback by Odette's passionate speech. When she had suddenly become acting lord, they had welcomed her. It was she who had been helped. She smiled, thanking Odette for sticking up for her, but Odette apologized for ruining her temper. She began to sob, which should have been a bad thing, but it started to attract more onlookers. Odette wept, and Tereshina told the men she accepted their apologies. She kindly told them to lift their heads. The men suddenly became fans of Tereshina, telling her she was like a goddess of sweetness. Tereshina laughed awkwardly, telling them they did not need to exaggerate. She turned to Hisui, telling him to tell them. Hisui smiled. He called Tereshina beautiful and said he understood why these men were calling her a goddess. He walked up to the men, shoving the chips into their mouths to shut them up. The men were instantly impressed with the snack. It was unlike anything they had tried before, and they even wanted to buy some. Tereshina thanked them, and in no time they became busy. A whole crowd had come to try the famous potato chips. Tereshina smiled, watching everyone enjoy the chips. The day went much better than anticipated, as they sold out of the chips, which was pretty good considering it was their first time. Hisui suggested they try increasing the numbers tomorrow and add more helpers too. It was a plan. The next morning, Tereshina woke up super exhausted. She checked her stats and saw that they had leveled up. By selling the village's harvest, she had successfully gained another skill, combined with toys from yesterday, which was a huge step forward. The great tree was almost waist-high now, and if it kept growing like this, she would be able to fulfill her promise to her father. There was a knock at the door, and Tereshina told them to come in. It was her maids who came with a letter from Solitique. Tereshina looked up, believing today was the day her engagement would be annulled. A letter had arrived from Lord Solitique, summoning her to the royal capital. Although she had not heard anything directly, she assumed that Malia and Solitique were going on secret dates. Lady Malia had also been studying etiquette, so for now it seemed that she had not made any major mistakes. Tereshina imagined her living her life in peace, with this major obstacle being resolved. Tereshina sat in the carriage with Solitique. Her maid wished them a farewell as they set off to Tereshina's surprise. Solitique was smiling ear to ear. He told Tereshina that it had been a while since they had gone out together outside of evening parties, then asked her about Lady Melia going to her village. Tereshina quickly told Solitique that Melia had come on her own. Was Solitique angry with her because of her harsh words toward Lady Melia? But Solitique's smile turned upside down. It turned out he was only jealous that he had not been invited to the village yet. Tereshina quickly told him it was only because it was not yet in a state worthy of showing him. She did not want him to be bored. But Solitique told her that he knew how hard she was working on the village, so there was no way he would be unimpressed. He reminded her that they were going to be husband and wife, so she should not worry about such small things. Tereshina realized she had completely misunderstood the situation. All she could say was yes. To make matters worse, Solitique announced that he had arranged for the carriage to take them to the village right now. He told Tereshina that he had gotten permission from the Marquis, so it was technically no problem. They continued to talk on the way, and Tereshina mentioned how dependable Lady Melia was. Solitique frowned, confused as to why Tereshina brought her up so suddenly. Tereshina was surprised that Solitique suddenly seemed so flat. She explained that she simply thought Melia was a very active and pure-hearted person. Since she had not gone out much from the estate, she might feel something close to admiration for that. Solitique laughed, saying she was quite one to talk. Compared to Lady Melia, he thought Tereshina was far more active as deputy lord. From now on, Tereshina should gain even more experience than Lady Melia. Tereshina knew there were still things she wanted to do, including traveling abroad. She told Solitique that thinking about all the things they could do from now on made her feel excited. Solitique took both of her hands and told her that he would always be by her side, and together they would see all the things she wanted and make the country even better. Tereshina smiled and told him yes. Even now, when he was close with Lady Melia, if he still said things like this to Tereshina, she did not know how she would keep up her act. She looked out the window, hoping it would at least be a gentle annulment. They were greeted by Toy, and Tereshina wondered where Hisui was. She guessed that because Solitique was here, he was keeping his distance today, especially after what had happened before. Tereshina received a notification that the Great Tree's level had increased to 4, and she was so excited she nearly screamed. Solitique asked her if everything was alright, and Tereshina awkwardly said that she had not expected to be going to the village, so she wore heels. But then Solitique said that he had something prepared. He smiled when he saw the others who had come as well. Solitique was surprised by how developed Tezrin was, and when Tereshina looked up she could even see some tourists. She quickly understood that the condition for level 4 was tourist visiting. She smiled, feeling fulfilled. Not long ago, this was a village no one ever came to. Tereshina and Solitique walked toward Mr. Anton, whose face lit up when he saw Tereshina. She introduced him to Solitique, who called himself Tereshina's fiancé. He smiled, telling Mr. Anton that he had heard the village was improving day by day. Mr. Anton bowed, reassuring Solitique that he would do his utmost to support Tereshina. The man with him introduced himself as Nicholas, a merchant from Halmel. He told Tereshina and Solitique that it was an honor to meet them. He explained that today he had come to request permission to open a branch office in the village. Tereshina was surprised to hear this. The company he was from, Pico Trading Company, was a major firm even in Halmel. She knew this would be a huge benefit for the village. Nicholas told them that he had been deeply impressed by the chips he tasted at the market the other day. How crispy and salty they were, like a jewel of taste. Tereshina giggled, telling Nicholas she was pleased he liked them. She added that she was also familiar with the Pico Trading Company. Tereshina turned to Anton, telling him that she would be leaving the rest of the decision to him. Anton placed his hand on his heart, reassuring her that he would take care of it. Solitique was surprised that Tereshina was not going to listen to any more of the conversation, but she told him that from now on she would not be able to be involved in everything. Whatever could be entrusted, she planned to ask the villagers to handle more and more. Solitique understood. Since the Linkart family was above them, he was sure they would not try anything improper. He laughed, telling her that they now knew he was her fiancé too, so they would offer terms favorable to the village. They both decided to check on the great tree next. The tree looked great, growing strong and healthy. Of course it was still small, but Solitique could tell it was being cared for with great love. Tereshina was super pleased to be praised. It genuinely touched her heart hearing Solitique's words of approval. She told Solitique she was truly happy that even she, without a blessing, could raise the great tree like this. Solitique got down on one knee and kissed Tereshina's hand. He told her he was proud to be her fiancé, but then they suddenly heard a familiar voice. It was Melia. Solitique looked pretty upset to see her, and he asked Tereshina if she had an appointment with her today. Tereshina said no. When Melia came running up to them, Solitique flatly told her he did not expect to see her here. Melia told him, without shame, that when she went to the castle she heard he had gone out with Tereshina, so she worked out it must be here. She went on to say she wrote a letter to Tereshina to tell her she would be coming immediately. She smirked, saying the letter would have been delivered to the mayor after they left, so she technically followed proper etiquette. Tereshina tried to hold her tongue, knowing she needed to word things nicely but more clearly once again, but Solitique beat her to it. He asked her why she sent such a meaningless letter. Melia began to sweat. She stuttered that she just wanted to get along better with both of them, Solitique and Tereshina. She asked if it was truly too sudden before apologizing. Tereshina knew this whole situation was a headache, making it appear as though she was bullying Melia. Melia bowed her head, saying Tereshina would not forgive her. She snarkily asked if a marquise's daughter could accept an apology. Tereshina took a breath and forced a smile. She told Melia not to worry about it, that everyone makes mistakes. She reminded her to be careful from now on though. Melia thanked Tereshina, and Solitique added that he would overlook it too if Tereshina was fine. However, he reminded her how rude it was to drop by unannounced. He also told Melia that he and her were not that close, so if she wanted to see either of them, sending a letter in advance was the proper way. Melia argued that when she went to the royal castle, no one said anything to her, but Solitique told her that those areas were free to others. Tereshina was also losing patience with her. Melia said she would be careful from now on, looking disappointed in herself. Tereshina hoped this would be the last of Melia's strange behavior. Melia smiled, saying she would like to make amends for the trouble she had caused. Tereshina wondered if she even knew how to make amends, so she told her it was a kind gesture, but she really did not mean to. Melia turned to her attendant Sara before announcing she had the blessing of Freyr, the god of abundance. She prayed for Lady Tereshina's great tree to grow. Tereshina watched anxiously as Melia took out some kind of potion. Tereshina rushed to stop her, with Melia claiming it was water she purified with her prayer. She dropped it onto the tree, which immediately bloomed a flower, a black flower. Melia looked up in excitement, asking Solitique if he saw her blessing, but Tereshina was beyond furious. What had this girl done? Solitique mentioned that he had never seen a great tree with a black flower. Tereshina looked down, completely defeated. All this work and effort just for Melia to come along and ruin it. Suddenly, Hisui appeared, yelling at Tereshina to go under the great tree and touch the flower. Tereshina rushed over, holding the flower in her hand. It was then that two options appeared. Either A, for Tereshina to leave the tree to be Melia's, or B, to make it her own by blooming a brand new flower. Tereshina was left with the flower in her hands, not sure what any of this meant. Melia gasped, telling Tereshina that her eyes had changed color. Tereshina knew that meant this was something only she could see. She did not know how it could be possible for another flower to bloom. Toy came running over, barking at the flower. Tereshina tried asking him if that meant it was okay. She began to cry, imagining the worst, but then she called for a new flower. She decided that the flower would be hers, and then like magic a white flower rose, replacing the black one. Tereshina, with tears streaming down her eyes, looked at the flower in admiration. Solitique rushed over, hugging Tereshina. He told her he had never seen a flower this beautiful, just like Tereshina. Tereshina smiled, embracing Solitique. Melia was stunned. She breathed that her flower had turned white. But then Tereshina stood up. She confronted Melia for what she did. She told Melia that the tree was hers and she did not want her interfering. Melia told Tereshina she was only trying to help the great tree grow as an apology. She claimed that with the blessing of the god of abundance it would grow all at once, and she was shameless enough to add that she wanted Solitique to be happy. Tereshina was enraged. Melia quickly added that she thought it would make Tereshina happy too, and she rubbed in that she wanted to pray for her blessings at work. Tereshina told Melia noble etiquette was not as simple as that and that she should have consulted Count Saltiamar, her father. But Melia snarkily said this was something between friends, so there was no need to get her father involved. By this point Tereshina was really trying to hold back her anger, so Melia backtracked, reassuring Tereshina she would try discussing it with her father. She then remarked how it might be a good thing. Hisui was also losing patience with Melia. He was confused as to why she always had that strange pleased look on her face. Melia was then sent away after apologizing for the third time. She begged them to keep being nice to her. Hisui walked with Sara, Melia's attendant. He whispered for her to scold Melia when she got home. Meanwhile, Tereshina looked over the flower. She saw that the black one's remains were still in the ground. She picked them up, wondering what she should do with them. Nina walked past, and Tereshina asked her to take the flower petals away. Nina took them while the others came to look at the flower. They called it Lady Tereshina's flower. Tereshina was very proud of herself. Solitique seemingly appeared out of nowhere, startling Tereshina. She was told that her eyes had changed back to their usual rose-pink color. Solitique admitted that he thought it could be a god's blessing, but it was hard to judge. Then Tereshina held her cheeks, wondering if this was a sign of a blessing. She also remembered that when she touched the great tree, her left eye grew hot. Solitique told her that it would be best to speak to a priest at the Grand Temple, saying he would go with her. Tereshina smiled warmly, thanking Solitique for his help. Later that night, Tereshina was given an overview of her progress, which was growing nicely. She relaxed in the bath, excited over everything that had happened today. She was very tired though. She did not think she would be able to fulfill her promise to her father so soon, though her father might be unhappy since he wanted her to stay home. As a result of business talk from Nichols, who visited as a tourist, 3 of his employees decided to move to the village. They first had to build the branch, so store operations would begin a little later in the future. He also wanted to strengthen the warding against evil. There were many children in the village, and if he recalled correctly, the condition to strengthen it was subjugating monsters. But Tereshina had no means to fight, so all she could do was ask Hisui for advice. She knocked on the door of her father's office, wondering how he would react to the events of the day. But her father was happy to see her, with a huge smile on his face. He had already seen the white flower, and he was beyond impressed that she had managed to make the great tree bloom so soon. To Tereshina's surprise, her father embraced her in a hug. He told her he had thought it was impossible at first and apologized for treating her so strictly. Despite her being without a blessing, he never cast her aside, so Tereshina felt nothing but love for her father. Her father looked down at her, telling her she was now appointed as the official lord of the 2nd district. Tereshina could not believe it. She and her father took a seat, and Tereshina told him everything. The only question she had was what she should do about Lady Melia. Both she and Hisui could see that her father was holding back his anger toward the girl while maintaining a positive expression. He said that he did not intend to do anything harsh. He had long known Count Saltiamar, and his son was reliable, but because Lady Melia was frail, it seemed they had indulged her every whim. Tereshina's father also commented that Count Saltiamar's wife had passed away as well, but regardless, Melia's behavior toward Tereshina was unacceptable, so he would speak with them. Tereshina thanked him. Feeling some sympathy for Melia, her father reminded her that just because Melia had a hard life, it did not mean she was allowed to do as she pleased. He told Tereshina not to let sentimentality excuse her. Sarashina smiled, telling her father she understood. Her father commented on the mark in her eye and how he had believed that Tesri had no blessing. But perhaps she was loved by an extraordinary god. Sarashina thought back to the choices she had seen and the flower that bloomed on the great tree. Hopefully the Grand Temple would have answers. Her father was not so sure, and he was uncertain what would happen to Sarashina. Her father asked Hisui to support Sarashina no matter what, and Hisui told him he would do his utmost to be of use to Lady Tesri. Toy barked, making sure they all knew they could count on him too. Sarashina's father chuckled, giving Toy a pat. Meanwhile, Solotique stayed up late, reading books to try to find answers. There seemed to be no precedent for a blessing appearing in the eyes. There was no information on it at all, and it was possible that Sarashina was the first person it had happened to. There were also no records of the white flower that bloomed on the great tree, nor of the black flower. What then was happening to Tesri and Melia? Solotique closed the book. While Tesri was happy to have a blessing, she must also be uneasy about the situation. Solotique was only trying to help by finding as much information as he could, but he felt like he had failed. If Tesrishina's blessing was rare, the temple would insist on investigating and summon her to the Grand Temple. Solotique knew he needed to prepare himself. No matter what, he was going to protect his fiancée. Soon after, the Pictor Trading Company's Tesrine branch was finally open. Tesrishina was shown around by Mr. Anton. She stepped inside to see the lovely shop filled with fresh produce and items. The assistant told Tereshina she was the very first customer, and that the carpenter Nicholas had brought along really worked fast. She commented that it would have been better for them to build Tereshina's house too, but Guts told her he just did not want to rush it. They laughed, knowing how proud Guts was. Since Lady Tereshina would be staying, he was making sure the foundation and interior were solidly built. That was why they were gathering materials, so Guts could remain focused on construction. Tereshina told them she wanted to help with something too, but she was told that what she was doing was already enough. He was just so happy that Lady Tereshina had asked him that he was putting more effort into the details. He promised that he would not keep her waiting long. He went on about how no corners would be cut and that he would build it from his heart. Tereshina smiled encouragingly, telling Guts that she was really looking forward to it. With the shop built, the condition for Great Tree Level 7 was achieved. But since the condition for Level 6 building her house was still unmet, the level remained at Level 5. Since Guts was putting his all into building it, Tereshina decided she would just enjoy the journey. Once the house was done, the level should jump up by 2. Nicholas congratulated Tereshina on becoming the official lord of the 2nd district. Tereshina smiled, surprised Nicholas knew. He told her that as a merchant, information was an important weapon. Of course, for the others it was new information. They gathered around Tereshina in excitement, congratulating her on her new title. Mr. Anton even suggested throwing a big celebration. Tereshina told him that their words of congratulations were more than enough for her. But Mr. Anton insisted, saying that an occasion like this needed a proper celebration. Nicholas mentioned that the shop was fully stocked with goods perfect for a feast. Mr. Anton smiled, telling Tereshina that her joy was their joy too. Of course, Tereshina accepted after hearing that. The others excitedly planned what they needed, and Mr. Anton told Tereshina he would begin preparations immediately. Hisui told Tereshina this was what he expected, since she was very popular. That was something Tereshina still had to get used to, and she placed her hands on her cheeks in embarrassment. Hisui asked Odette what kind of food she would make for the feast, and she said she had not thought of anything yet. Odette asked if there was a dish that fit a banquet she had in mind. Tereshina thought that something everyone would enjoy would be best, so she suggested a barbecue. But Odette and Hisui had never heard of a barbecue before. Tereshina described it as an open fire with meat and vegetables cooked on skewers. The best part was that it brought everyone together outside to eat. They thought it sounded wonderful, and Tereshina told them she would get the equipment ready. Nicholas offered to help, and Tereshina thanked him. She offered to prepare the ingredients instead, but Odette already had that sorted. So Tereshina was completely core-free, leaving Hisui to suggest they go and check on the great tree instead. The tree was standing strong and proud, and Hisui told Tereshina that it always greeted them warmly. Tereshina could see that more leaves had sprouted. She guessed it was because the children were harvesting now, and with the harvest surpassing 10,000, the blessing of abundance had leveled up. Hisui told her that once it grew even more, it would be very beautiful. He was looking forward to it, as was Tereshina. Tui barked, and Hisui guessed he must be hungry. He asked Tereshina if he could have a few potatoes. Tereshina smiled, telling Hisui he could let Tui have plenty. When she was alone, she activated the Asgard system, which revealed her current status. The great tree was at level 5 and all acquired skills were listed. Before heading to the Grand Temple, Tereshina wanted to raise the skill levels further. If Protective Charm reached level 2, the monster free zone would widen. For that, she would need to defeat 100 monsters. There were also skills she might be able to gain at the Grand Temple, so she should plan ahead. She hoped for the tree to grow strong and healthy. Odette began the barbecue and told Tereshina she could sit down and relax, but Tereshina insisted on helping this time. It would be a way for her to grow closer to everyone. Odette smiled as Tereshina handled the food. She told Tereshina she was quite unusual, since normally noble ladies would not chip in with the dirty work. But Tereshina was always happy to help with farming and cooking. Tereshina told Odette she was enjoying herself now, and that was thanks to Odette and all the other villagers. Odette was once again overwhelmed by Tereshina's gracious words. Hisui came over and offered Lady Tereshina either ale, wine, or juice. Tereshina asked for juice and Hisui passed her a glass. They all gathered together for a toast. Tereshina asked if Mr. Anton wanted to do it, but he said they should ask the Lord instead. Tereshina began to sweat. She still had many worries about whether she could really manage as a lord from now on. But everyone gathered around, warm smiles on their faces. In that moment, Tereshina knew that for the sake of the people here, she would do her very best. She told them she was happy they could all celebrate together like this today, and that she was very proud to have become the lord of the village in the 2nd district. She thanked everyone for working so hard with her and for their support. She raised her glass into the air, making a toast to the future of Tesrin village. The villagers raised their glasses as well. Soon after food was served, Mr. Anton told Tereshina to eat well and enjoy her meal. She thanked him for her plate. She told Mr. Anton that although the exact date was undecided, it seemed she would be heading to the Grand Temple soon, so she might not be able to come to the village for a while. Mr. Anton told her he understood and that she could leave everything to him while she was away. Tereshina asked if he knew the children's ages as well, since she wanted to check the schedule for the blessing ritual. Mr. Anton told her there were 3 children who had not had the ritual yet: Giselle, Maurice, and Nina. Giselle was 5 and born in the autumn month. Maurice was also 5 and born in the spring month. Nina was 4 and born in the wind month. The other children had already completed the blessing ritual. Tereshina thought to herself that today was the 10th day of the fire month. For Tereshina, it was only after coming to the village that she had started doing work with her hands. Odette apologized, knowing Tereshina probably did not want to see her worn hands. But Tereshina told her there was nothing to apologize for. She loved Odette's hands and recognized how hard she worked. The only thing that concerned Tereshina was that Odette's hands looked painful, and she offered to bring her some hand cream next time. Odette teared up, telling Tereshina she could not possibly accept something so expensive, and that Tereshina's sentiment alone was more than enough. Tereshina knew Odette was too kind. She understood that products for nobles were far too costly to use comfortably, and she wished hand cream could be more affordable for everyone. Guts tapped Tereshina on the shoulder, thanking her for being so kind to Odette, but Tereshina told him she was only speaking her thoughts. That, however, was exactly what Guts meant. With the money from the stalls, they had been able to buy hunting tools and ingredients. Everyone was happy that the variety of dishes had increased and that they could obtain meat more easily. It was thanks to Tereshina that life in the village had become much more comfortable. Tereshina was overjoyed, not only because she had helped these people, but also because she had found a real community among them. It might be selfish of her, but at the very least she wanted those within her reach to live in peace, and that was why she had to do her very best. Giselle's blessing ritual was discussed next. With the ritual held on the last day of each month, and since it also involved Tereshina's blessing, it would be held at the Grand Temple. Hisui went on his way to send the documents there. Tereshina stayed in her office to write Solatik a letter, but she asked Hisui to wait for a moment, as she had another important matter to discuss. Hisui turned back, wondering what it could be. Tereshina paused before telling him that she wanted to defend herself. Hisui was confused at first, but said she must have a reason. Tereshina told him she had too. She explained that she had been going out more often and freely walking around the village, and she wanted a way to defend herself against monsters. Hisui knew she was right. He knew it would be best if he could always protect her, but he had his limitations. Tereshina added that the other reason was for the great tree in the village. She could not explain it well, but when she defeated monsters, the great tree seemed relieved. As the Lord, she wanted to give that reassurance. If she could subdue the monsters near the village, it would help the people too. Hisui told Tereshina he did not understand the great tree, but that he believed in her. He said they should decide on what kind of weapon would be best. Tereshina asked if it was really okay, but Hisui joked that he could not say no. Tereshina was very happy, and she planned for them to go to the weapon shop tomorrow. She was finally making her debut in monster hunting. The next day, Hisui and Tereshina arrived at the weapon shop. They were greeted by the store assistant, and Tereshina looked around in awe. It was even better than she expected. She told him she needed a weapon she could handle well, and Hisui added something for the rear guard. The store assistant smiled, realizing it was not a case of Tereshina walking into the wrong shop. He suggested a bow, throwing knives, or spirit orbs as good choices. Tereshina told him she was not confident in hitting anyone with knives, so either the bow or the orbs would be best. The store assistant brought out a bow, telling her this one would suit her well. It was easy to handle and especially popular among women. Tereshina inspected the bow, thinking it might take some getting used to. She asked how much it cost, and he told her 50,000 lus. Tereshina thought the price was fair, since it was something she would continue using. Tereshina then asked to see the orbs as well, and the assistant brought out a box filled with them. There were 4 different types: fire, water, wind, and earth. When thrown at an enemy, they attacked with the power of each elemental spirit, and their effects were tremendous. Tsirashina glanced at the price tag, which was not very pleasant. She thought about how much money they had saved. They needed funds for the village's development, Hisui's salary, and soon they would have to hire maids and guards as well. To defeat 100 monsters, the cost would be far too high, so it would be better to try the bow for now. Still, Tsirashina wanted to keep a few orbs just in case, for herself and for the village. She told the shop assistant she would take the bow and arrows, along with 5 spirit orbs of each type. She also wanted a weapon for Hisui, who planned to be on the front line, so perhaps a sword and throwing knives. The assistant went to the back and returned with a light but powerful-looking sword. He also brought Hisui several throwing knives. There were heavy ones with strong power, lighter ones that would not cause fatal wounds, and intimidation types. He asked Hisui if he would like to try throwing them. Hisui tossed a knife which landed just past the target. Tsirashina was impressed. He did well for a first attempt and showed great control. The store assistant told him that with practice he would land clean hits. Hisui tried again with another knife which was easier to throw. Tsirashina decided they should go with that one since ease of throwing was important. Hisui agreed, thanking Tsirashina with a big smile. They thanked the store assistant and left, though Tsirashina still hoped to try the spirit orbs one day. She brought the weapons back to the village and showed them to the villagers. Mr. Anton immediately recognized what they were. Tsirashina told them that since the village's defenses were lacking, she thought it would be best to have some prepared. Mr. Anton knew they were expensive, but Tsirashina told him not to hesitate to use them if he ever needed to. Mr. Anton thanked her, vowing to protect everyone if the time came. Tsirashina worriedly told him not to push himself too hard, but Mr. Anton was as valiant as ever. She then told him she hoped to discuss the blessing ritual today. She asked if it would be better for Giselle to join as well. Mr. Anton agreed, and Odette offered to go and fetch her. Giselle arrived at the office a few moments later, greeting Tsirashina cheerfully. Tsirashina smiled and told Giselle she would explain the blessing ritual now. Giselle was extremely excited, clutching her cheeks as she tried to contain herself. She was very cute. Hisui read out that they would reach the Grand Temple in 10 days, so they would depart on the 29th day of the autumn month. The carriage would be provided, so there was no need to worry. Tsirashina added that Lord Solatique would also be accompanying them. Mr. Anton and Giselle reacted even more strongly, knowing the Crown Prince would be joining them. Giselle giggled, telling her grandfather that he was stumbling over his words. Anton told Giselle that unless you were a noble, the chances of speaking with royalty were slim. Tsirashina explained that since they would be traveling in separate carriages, there might not be much interaction. Mr. Anton bowed, telling her he would do his very best not to cause any trouble. Tsirashina told Anton not to worry, as Solatique was very kind. She added that he had even said he wanted to visit Tiran village personally. Mr. Anton could hardly believe his ears. The next thing for Tsirashina to sort out was the hand cream she wanted to get for Odette. She walked into the shop to see Chloe, who was very surprised to see her. Tsirashina explained that she had a favor to ask. She wanted to make hand cream using Tiran village's honey, and she was there to ask for the help of the Pictor Company. She asked Chloe if she knew how to make hand cream, and Chloe replied that if hand cream from Tiran village were made, she would absolutely have to use it all the time. Then Chloe realized that she would be the one in charge of production, and she reassured Tsirashina that she knew exactly what she was doing. Tsirashina chuckled, telling her that was reassuring. First they would need honey and beeswax. Chloe told Tsirashina she would ask Guts to deliver them to the store. She would also talk with Guts about how much they could set aside for hand cream use going forward. Chloe awkwardly brought up material costs, sales price and profit distribution, and Tsirashina reassured her that she would discuss it with Anton as well, so they could settle everything later. Chloe told Tsirashina that once a prototype was ready she would contact her immediately. Tsirashina told Chloe she was looking forward to it, and once she left, Chloe clutched her hands in excitement. Tsirashina was a lovely person, and Chloe felt as though a sweet fragrance had drifted through the air. Tsirashina was elegant even in plain clothes, and the fact that she herself brought up finances was very admirable. Chloe vowed to do her very best, and she was so excited that she said it out loud. Hisui and Tsirashina giggled from outside at how fired up Chloe had become over the idea. Hisui asked Tsirashina if she was really planning to fight monsters today, and Tsirashina said she thought she would try starting with weak monsters. Flower rabbits, for example, were the weakest and almost mascot-like monsters. But when they stood in front of a flower rabbit, Tsirashina could not help finding it cute. In the game she could defeat them without thinking, but in real life it felt wrong to her. Hisui asked if she was alright, but she told him she just needed a moment. Hisui understood. It must be hard to slay monsters for the first time. Meanwhile, Tsirashina reminded herself that it was for the village. When she finally composed herself, Hisui offered to draw the rabbit's attention so Tsirashina could shoot. He threw a blade to distract it, and Tsirashina raised her bow. She was very worried she might hit Hisui's head, so she told him to step aside, but if Hisui moved away, the rabbit might run off. Tsirashina became overwhelmed and asked Hisui if they could retreat for the day. Hisui suggested that instead of real combat they could start with target practice. In the end, that was what they decided. Later that night, Hisui asked Terashina what he should bring to the Grand Temple. Terashina told him nothing special, just a change of clothes. She almost mentioned underwear as well, but that would have been far too embarrassing. She then told Hisui that they would need a new maid to accompany her to the village and the temple. Hisui looked at her in concern, so Terashina quickly blurted out that she could not have him managing her underwear. Hisui went bright red, stammering that it certainly would not be appropriate since he was a man. Terashina sipped her tea. She had to get her point across one way or another. Hisui then added that they could make one of the women from Tiran village her maid. She could work in the village normally and attend to Terashina whenever she was there or traveling. Terashina knew that was a good idea. There was Odette, or Sophie. Since it would be more of an assistant for village duties rather than a marquise's lady's maid, it would not feel like too much pressure. She told Hisui they could discuss it tomorrow. First though, they needed to contact Anton. If Hisui sent a fast horse, the letter should arrive before bedtime. Hisui told her he understood and that he would send the letter immediately. Terashina was very excited. She knew that since they were going to the Grand Temple, they needed to clear many quests as well. She sat down at her desk and began to make a list. As she wrote, she felt certain that this would allow her to gain even more skills. Odette and Sophie asked Anton what he needed from them. It was already quite late, and they still had to put the children to bed. Anton reassured them that Guts was taking care of that. A letter had just arrived from Hisui, and it said that if a decision was to be made about a maid, the sooner the better. He cut straight to the point, telling them that Terashina would like one of them to become her personal attendant. Sophie and Odette could hardly believe their ears. One of them would be Lady Terashina's attendant. Anton explained that it would only be when Terashina went to the village or the temple. He also said that even if they did not decide today, they could keep it in mind. Sophie grew worried. They had no education at all, and they did not know the first thing about serving. She was happy, but she would hate to make a mistake and embarrass Lady Terashina. Odette looked worried as well. Terashina must know that they came from the slums, and yet she still wanted to hire them. That had to be because of her kindness and trust. Odette felt the same as Sophie. It was nerve-wracking to think she might not be able to repay Lady Terashina's kindness, but if she could give back even a little, she wanted to serve her. Anton smiled. He told them that they truly loved Terashina, and both of them enthusiastically agreed. Then an awkward moment followed, before Sophie smiled and told Anton that Odette was the most suitable for the role. Odette began to sweat, telling Sophie she was a bit rough around the edges. Sophie chuckled, telling Odette that the way she was now she would only embarrass Terashina. After receiving Sophie's encouragement, Odette stepped forward. She told Anton she would take on the role in Sophie's place but that she would teach Sophie everything she learned. Someday they could serve Terashina together. Anton smiled, telling the girls that it seemed the matter was settled. What mattered most was that both of them looked pleased. Sophie added that while everyone was away, she would work to make the village even better and surprise them. She would serve Terashina with all she had as well. Odette was panicking. She remembered what Grandpa Anton had said and told Terashina that if it was all right, she would like to become her attendant. Terashina smiled, saying she was very happy to hear that. Giselle appeared out of nowhere, asking if this was what yesterday's talk had been about. Odette proudly announced that Sophie was on a mission to improve the village so much that everyone would be surprised when they returned, and that Odette herself would work just as hard at serving. They both cringed and told Giselle to be quiet, but Giselle, innocent as ever, said she would do her best to help both of them too. They thanked her, still deeply embarrassed that she had exposed them in front of Terashina. Hisui told Terashina that things would soon become busy, so it would be best if Odette started working as soon as possible. Terashina turned to Odette and explained that her first task would be helping her prepare and manage her luggage when they went to the Great Temple for the blessing ritual. Odette looked anxious, but Terashina told her not to worry. First, she could accompany them to the mansion in the capital. Terashina's maids were based there, and they could teach Odette the work. Odette looked very excited at the thought of visiting Terashina's home. She bowed deeply, thanking Terashina for the opportunity. It would be wonderful to learn proper manners, then teach Sophie and eventually even the children. If everyone's education improved, the village would become even better. Terashina told Odette to lift her head and handed her a handkerchief. Odette hesitated to accept it because it was so lovely, so Terashina gently dabbed her tears herself. She told Odette that from now on there might be many hard and painful moments. When that happened, Odette should tell her. She did not need to carry everything alone. Odette agreed, and Terashina reassured her that she would grow used to things in no time. Although Odette still had her worries, everything Lady Terashina did, even the smallest gesture, meant a great deal to her, and made her happier than words could express. Odette then asked Terashina for one thing, if it was something she could request. She asked Terashina to tell her whenever she made a mistake. Odette knew how kind Terashina was, and she did not want her to stay silent if Odette did something improper without realizing it. She would hate to cause trouble for Terashina because of that. Terashina giggled, telling Odette she was very earnest. She agreed that if something happened, she would be completely honest with her. Odette smiled and thanked Terashina. If she could bring her even the smallest joy, if she could be a support to her, she would be truly happy. She did wonder, though, if she would feel the same way if it were another noble. Tereshina asked Odette if she would be alright joining them starting today, and Odette replied without hesitation that she would. Tereshina smiled, telling her she would be counting on her. They arrived in the capital, and Odette was completely blown away by the beautiful architecture and bustling streets. She leaned toward the carriage window, telling Hisui and Tereshina that it was her first time there. Tereshina smiled, asking if that was so, and suggested they do a bit of sightseeing. Odette thanked her, her face lighting up with excitement. They wandered through the streets, peering into boutique windows and admiring the lovely dresses on display. Eventually they arrived at the mansion. Anna came out to greet them the moment they arrived, and Odette was struck by how graceful and polite she was as she spoke. Tereshina introduced Anna to Odette, explaining that she was from Tilan village and would be serving as her attendant. Odette bowed and told Anna she was looking forward to working with her. Anna returned the greeting, saying it was a pleasure to meet her, then immediately corrected Odette's posture. When Odette straightened up, Anna nodded approvingly, and told her she looked very elegant standing that way. Tereshina explained that Odette would be accompanying her for some time, and asked if Anna could guide her as a senior maid while they were at the manor. Anna agreed at once, saying she would take Odette under her wing. Tereshina let Odette go, encouraging her to do her best. With Anna's guidance, she was sure Odette would quickly learn the basics and proper manners. Anna then told Hisui that they could proceed to their chambers. A carriage bearing Lord Solitik's emblem awaited them, and Anna wondered aloud if it carried a message regarding the Great Temple schedule. Hisui said he would handle it, and told Tereshina she should rest in her room. Toi followed Tereshina inside, and the moment they were alone, she knelt and wrapped her arms around him. She told him he was her greatest comfort and that she loved him very much. Toi barked happily in response, making it clear he felt the same. Soon after, he caught a scent coming from her bag, and Tereshina giggled, telling him he really did have a sharp nose. She pulled out a large piece of dried meat she had bought earlier and handed it to him. Toi began to drool before eagerly chewing it down, and Tereshina laughed softly, telling him he did not need to rush. Just then, Hisui entered the room, informing Tereshina that a letter had arrived from Lord Solitik. Seeing Toi looking so pleased, he paused, and Tereshina explained that she was giving him dried meat as a reward for always working so hard. Hisui handed her the letter, then noticed something out of the corner of his eye. He pointed out that she had a bit of Toi's fur caught in her hair near the nape of her neck. Tereshina was not surprised, since Toi was a large, fluffy dog. Hisui went to fetch a paper knife while Tereshina braced herself and opened the letter. After reading through it, Hisui asked what it said. Tereshina replied that Lord Solitik had adjusted his work so there would be no major changes to the original schedule. Hisui let out a sigh of relief. It was reassuring that Lord Solitik, the Crown Prince, would accompany them to the Great Temple. However, with the round trip taking over 20 days, it meant he would be unable to deepen his bond with Lady Melia during that time. If the two of them failed to strengthen their bond, Tereshina would die. The Great Temple was also not a place they could casually visit on their own. Noticing her silence, Hisui asked if something was wrong. Tereshina admitted that she had been considering inviting Lady Melia along as well. Hisui looked shocked at the suggestion. Tereshina continued, saying it might be a good opportunity since Lady Melia wanted to grow closer to them. It was clear, however, that Hisui was not Melia's biggest fan. Seeing his reaction, Tereshina told him to forget the idea. For now, romance would simply have to wait. At that moment, voices sounded outside, and the door opened. Odette and Anna stepped in, Odette now dressed in her new uniform. She looked wonderful. In her hands she held a bouquet of roses, a gift from Prince Solitik. Tereshina smiled at the beautiful flowers, and Odette admitted she had been surprised as well. They were so large and vibrant. Tarshanai told her that they were likely roses carefully tended by the royal gardeners in the palace gardens who cared for them every day to make them bloom so beautifully. Odette listened in awe. It all felt like an entirely different world to her. She arranged the flowers carefully, and Tarshanai praised her both for her skill and for how lovely she looked in her maid outfit. Tarshanai then explained that until Odette fully learned her duties, she could stay at the mansion. After that, she could return to the village, so there was no need to worry. Odette was deeply moved by how thoroughly Tarshanai had thought everything through. And for Lady Tereshina, Odette resolved that she would do her very best. Odette did an amazing job. She sat Tereshina down and carefully styled her hair as Tereshina praised her work. Tereshina told Odette that she had become so graceful compared to when she first asked her to be her attendant. Odette replied that she still had much to learn, but she promised to keep working hard. Tereshina told her she was always grateful for her efforts and that she would be counting on her during their journey to the Great Temple. Solitik met them at the driveway and greeted Tereshina with a warm good morning. He explained that today's escorts would be Lord Wilfred and Lord Olgren, who would be looking after her. It felt refreshing to meet outside of evening gatherings, and both men assured Tereshina that she could rely on them. Lord Amelio also stepped forward, saying it had been some time and that he would be accompanying them as well. Tereshina thanked him with a warm smile. Since it was her first time traveling far from home, his words were especially reassuring. She apologized for the late introductions and introduced the men to Hisui, her butler. Hisui explained that although he was inexperienced, he served Lady Tereshina with all his heart. Odette bowed as well, telling them it was a pleasure to meet them. Solitique smiled kindly and asked Hisui and Odette to make sure Tereshina had everything she needed. His calm demeanor and elegance left a strong impression on Odette. Hisui asked Odette to hand him the luggage so he could load it, and the others began preparing for the journey. Their next destination would be Turin village. Tereshina noticed how tense Odette seemed and gently told her there was no need to be so nervous. She reassured her that Solitique was very kind. Soon everyone boarded the carriage. Since Odette would have more chances to attend to Solitique in the future, she reminded herself to remain composed. They arrived at the village not long after, where Giselle and Anton were already waiting. Tereshina remembered that this was Solitique's second visit to Turin village, and he mentioned that he wanted to visit more often. He even asked if she would show him around again next time. Earlier, Olgren had brought back some chips and offered them to the others, saying they had become the talk of the town. Tereshina was surprised when Solitique tried them himself, and even more so when he said they were delicious. She promised to tell everyone in the village, knowing how happy they would be to hear that the crown prince enjoyed their food. Thinking back on how everything had begun, Tereshina could not help but feel happy. She told Solitique that the Pico Trading Company had opened, and that distribution was slowly expanding. Solitique knew how hard she had been working, perhaps even too hard. She had even managed to make the great tree bloom in just 3 months. He could not help but worry how far his fiancée might push herself next. He gently took her hand and asked her to always stay by his side. Tereshina looked at him, completely at a loss for words. Solitique then asked if he could open the window, mentioning that the breeze was pleasant this time of year. As Tereshina looked outside, something caught her eye. Near the cliff below, plant monsters were slowly moving about. They were easy targets and perfect for light hunting practice. She asked Solitique if they could take a short break there. He asked if she was feeling tired and knocked on the carriage wall to slow it down. Tereshina replied that it was simply such a beautiful day as she stepped outside, and Solitique agreed. She then asked Hisui to bring her bow. Solitique reminded her not to overexert herself on the very first day of their journey, and Tereshina reassured him she would only do a little. Some of Solitique's men offered to spar with her, but she politely declined. Hisui brought her bow and arrows, and Solitique asked if she intended to train with real targets. She replied that she would be careful and planned to shoot from the top of the cliff, which was a safe distance and ideal for practice. She asked Solitique if he would mind waiting in the carriage, since she had only just started and felt embarrassed. Solitique told her not to worry, reminding her that everyone had to start somewhere. Encouraged, Tereshina agreed. She needed to defeat 100 monsters for the sake of the village, so she could not afford to be shy. She drew her bow and struck a monster on her very first attempt. Hisui excitedly told her she had done it and handed her another arrow. She shot again, hitting the same monster and defeating it completely. The monster crumbled into dust, and Tereshina was praised by everyone around her. The dropped loot was too far below to retrieve, so she decided to let it go and continued practicing instead. Hisui told her she was doing great, and one of Solitique's men advised her to relax her shoulders while shooting so she could draw the bow more smoothly. Tereshina thanked him and immediately felt the difference. She continued firing, and the others were deeply impressed by her progress. They explained that as a user's skill improved, even the same weapon naturally became stronger. Tereshina was thrilled by how much she had grown. Defeating so many monsters would make anyone improve. However, she eventually became too absorbed and overdid it. Hisui told her they were nearly out of arrows and that they should stop for the day. They needed to reach the next town soon or they would have to camp outdoors. Realizing this, Tereshina apologized for keeping everyone waiting and thanked the men for their help and advice. Solitique told her he was very impressed and that he loved watching her practice. His words made her feel embarrassed. She wondered why he said such things so casually and struggled to keep her composure. As they headed back to the carriage, Tereshina noticed one last monster. It was a fully grown treant fairy. She wondered if she could defeat it as well. Since they were already there, she decided to test one of her spirit orbs for the first time. She gripped the orb, took aim, and threw it. The orb landed in front of the treant fairy and erupted into flames. The power of the explosion startled Tereshina herself. Solitique rushed over immediately to check what had happened. Tereshina apologized and explained that she had never used a spirit orb before and was only testing it. Solitique told her to inform him next time, but said there was no need to apologize. As long as she was safe, that was all that mattered. That night they arrived at their lodgings. Tereshina reviewed her status and quickly realized that all her stats had increased. Both her ward and attack buffs were impressive. To reach level 3 she would need to defeat 1,000 monsters. The road ahead was long. Still, reaching level 2 meant she had already defeated 100 monsters, and she decided she deserved some credit for that. As she prepared for bed, she could only imagine the muscle pain she would wake up with the next morning. The next day in Kuriko, Solitique and Tereshina wandered through the streets together. The first thing Tereshina noticed was how wonderful the town smelled. Solitique explained that Kuriko was famous for its perfumes. Giselle and Odette also seemed to love the town. Tereshina told Odette that they would be departing early the next morning, so once she had dropped off her luggage in her room, she was free until nightfall. Odette thanked her. Hisui then asked Tereshina what she would like to do next. Sarashina said she wanted to look around the shops and invited him to come along. Before Hisui could respond, Solitique appeared and said he would like to join them as well if it was shopping. Sarashina told him she only planned to buy flower seeds so it might be boring. Solitique replied that as long as he was with her he did not mind at all. Sarashina wanted to raise her sweet nectar level quickly, so she knew she needed to buy as many types of seeds as possible. 100 varieties were required to summon the divine beast, and the road ahead was long. As they walked, a fly buzzed past her and landed on a nearby plant. Unfortunately for the fly, it turned out to be a carnivorous plant, which promptly swallowed it. Terashina wondered if such plants would count as flowers according to the system. She decided to put that thought aside for now. At the front of the shop, they spotted a rainbow rose. It was the first time Terashina had ever seen something like it. Solitique asked if anything had caught her eye, and she admitted that the rare flowers were tempting. However, she did not know how to grow them, and they were far too expensive. Instead, she chose easier varieties such as cosmos, marguerites, and geraniums. Hisui asked if they should buy seedlings, but Sarashina replied that she could grow them from seeds. As they were finalizing their purchase, a store assistant brought out a stunning bundle of platinum roses. They immediately caught Solitique's attention. To him, they were as beautiful as Terashina herself. While Hisui and Terashina checked out the seeds, Solitique quietly asked the assistant to wrap the roses. When he returned, he surprised Terashina with them. She was stunned by how beautiful they were. Solitique suggested planting them in the village as well, and Terashina liked the idea, until she noticed the price tag, 255,000. She could hardly believe it. She decided she would grow them indoors once her house was finished. After that, Solitique mentioned that there was another shop he wanted to visit. Since Kuriko was famous for perfume, he thought Terashina might enjoy taking a look. At that moment, something clicked in her mind. In the game, there was an event where the romance target wore the same scent and leaned in to smell the back of the heroine's hand, a heart-pounding moment. There was no reason for a villainess like her to trigger an event meant for the heroine. Still, visiting a perfume shop was a normal thing to do while traveling, was it not? Solitique instructed Hisui and Wilfred to return to the inn, while Olgren would continue guarding them. Terashina immediately objected, saying that Hisui was her butler and that she wanted him to come along. Solitique did not look pleased, and Terashina wondered if he was still holding a grudge. Solitique told her that she did not need a butler on a date and that Olgren's presence was more than enough for security. Terashina had no choice but to accept his wishes, even though she had not expected this to be a date at all. They arrived at the Dreamflower Garden, a perfume boutique frequented by nobles. The store was elegant, with ornate bottles beautifully displayed. Solitique asked Terashina if she would choose a perfume that suited him. She agreed, though she knew that line was meant for the heroine, not her. Solitique then said he would choose one for her as well, and that they could wear them together. Terashina wondered if the romance was truly advancing, or if this was all just coincidence. She carefully sampled different scents until she found one with a fresh, minty fragrance. Solitique liked it immediately, especially the blue bottle it came in. He then chose one for her, a gentle and sweet scent that Terashina found herself liking very much. Solitique dabbed the perfume onto her wrist and smiled as she inhaled it. He said he was glad she liked it and told her it was a gift. Terashina felt uneasy about accepting such an expensive present, but Solitique asked her to apply some to him as well. She decided that she would buy something for him in return. In the end, he still had to achieve a happy ending with the heroine, so she resolved not to become too conscious of him from now on. She also thought it would be nice to buy souvenirs for Odette and Hisui. A few days later, Giselle gazed out of the carriage window with excitement. Anton gently scolded her, telling her to sit down since standing while the carriage was moving was dangerous. Their journey would be ending soon anyway. Giselle apologized and said she was just so happy. Anton smiled and said it was because she would be receiving her blessing soon. Giselle nodded but added that back when she lived in the slums she was always hungry. She remembered how Grandpa Anton and Guts decided they should leave, how difficult the journey had been and how everyone helped one another along the way. She remembered how Guts would carry her on his back. Even though life was hard back then, simply having a full stomach had been enough to make her happy. Now, so many things brought her joy. She knew she owed it all to Lady Terashina. Thanks to her, to Guts, and to Grandpa Anton, she was happy. She thanked Anton again and he gently patted her head, telling her there was no need for thanks. The place that had once been nothing more than bare survival had become a village where they could dream about the children's futures. It was all thanks to Lady Terashina, and no amount of gratitude would ever feel like enough. The villagers were stunned once they reached the venue, with Anton saying it was his very first time here. Terashina smiled encouragingly, yelling at him that in Harmil the minor temple was nearby so not many people came all the way out here. She told them they could finish up at reception. Mr. Anton smiled and agreed as Terashina turned to Hisui, telling him to handle the lodging arrangements for Mr. Anton and Giselle. Hisui said he understood and Odette said that she would prepare Terashina's room. As for the others, guest rooms were arranged. Solitique said that he would wait in the guest room, and he would like to accompany Terashina, but he couldn't get in the way of the Lord of Tiran's village duties. Terashina hoped that she could handle everything. Solatique told her that if anything comes up she should consult him and he might be of some help. She thanked him, telling him she would do her utmost for the sake of the village. Giselle turned to Tereshina, asking her if all those people were priests and priestesses. Tereshina told her that was right. They wear the vestments of the spirits who granted them blessings. Giselle looked up curiously as Tereshina said those blessed by water wear blue. The fire spirit was red, the wind spirit was green, and the earth spirit was brown. If she looked closely, she could see embroidery on the robes too. Giselle excitedly said that she wanted a blessing soon too, and Tereshina told her that was something for her to look forward to. Tereshina couldn't help getting excited, her own villager receiving a blessing for the first time. She knew she may not even sleep tonight. A priest thanked her for waiting, saying she would handle the registration. Tereshina told her they came from Turin village and the child receiving the right is Giselle. The priest asked if Turin village was the recently established one, and Tereshina said yes. It was impressive that she knew about the village already. She thought the great temple would be intimidating, but it wasn't. Well, she can hardly even go to the minor temple since she did not have a blessing. The priest held her hands together, praying that the children of Turin village be blessed in their first rite. She said that tomorrow at 10 a.m. they will hold the blessing ceremony. Tereshina smiled excitedly, thanking the priest. She then handed her a bag. She said it was just a small token and they appreciated her thankfulness. Solatique made Tereshina a cup of tea in the room, asking her if the procedures went smoothly. Tereshina said yes, and he said that tomorrow the temple will be busy with the blessing rites. So they've been granted time the afternoon of the day after tomorrow. Tereshina wondered to herself whether she truly had a blessing, and thought that if it was a mistake then what? She told Solatique she understood and admitted she was getting nervous. He told her she might be anxious but he would be with her. He said that the next day while she attended the ceremony he would look into blessings in the library. Tereshina apologized for troubling him so much for her sake. Solatique said he was just happy to be with her like this and that traveling far with her was a good thing. Tereshina noted that he rarely left the castle himself. Solatique thought to himself that Tereshina's replies seemed a bit off and that he needed to think of an approach that got through to her better. He mentioned they would also have the return trip. Tereshina looked confused, and he said it was nothing. The next morning, Giselle was nervous, thinking that today she would find out her blessing and her heart was pounding. Tereshina greeted her with a good morning, startling her. She apologized and gave Giselle a cup of hot milk. Tereshina asked if she had slept well. Giselle admitted she was nervous and had woken up a little early. She asked if Tereshina had woken early too. Tereshina said a cup of hot milk should help her relax. Giselle said it was delicious and was surprised that Lady Tereshina got nervous as well. Tereshina said she had had some hot milk a moment ago too. She told Giselle she would be fine and that they would be watching over her. Giselle said okay. At the ceremony hall, Tereshina observed that there were many children receiving the rite, as expected of the great temple, and that surprisingly not many of them seemed nervous. She noticed Giselle looked fine now too and thought that perhaps she herself was the most nervous of all. A bell rang and the children were told to step forward. Tereshina said it was finally starting and prayed for them to receive a blessing. Anton told Giselle to do her best and she said she was off. A priestess announced that she was one who served Mani, the moon god. She offered prayers that the new children living in the land receive the god's sigils. She invoked the water spirit who brings spring for life's moisture, the fire spirit who nurtures life for strength, the wind spirit who grants peace for kindness and thoughtfulness, and the earth spirit who gives trials for prayer. She commanded the seal of blessing to be bestowed upon the children. A brilliant light appeared. Hisui remarked on how bright it was, and Anton agreed. Giselle saw the light glowing brown. Tereshina realized she had received the earth spirit's blessing. She was relieved, thinking to herself that Giselle would not have to go through what she had, having no sigil and not shining at all. Giselle ran back excitedly, announcing that she had received the earth spirit's blessing. She said she was so glad it was the blessing she had wanted. Anton congratulated her. Tereshina asked if she had wanted the earth blessing. Giselle said yes, explaining that with the earth blessing she could help a lot in the fields and that she would work even harder for Turin village. Anton was moved, thinking what a good child she was. The others were emotional too. Everyone around them congratulated Giselle. A priest announced that they should exit, as the next ceremony was about to begin. Outside the temple, Anton and Giselle thanked Tereshina and said they would be taking their leave. She told them to take care on their way back. Tereshina said they should spend the rest of the day completing temple quests, and told Hisui and Odette they were free to do as they liked. She said she wanted to have a look around inside the great temple. Hisui said he was Lady Therese's butler apprentice, so he would accompany her. Giselle said she wanted to go with them too. Tereshina looked caught off guard. Odette and Hisui declared they would accompany Tereshina as her servant and maid. Tereshina had been thinking of taking on temple quests alone but worried that depending on the quest she might end up looking suspicious. She did not want to brush off their kindness, so she told them to please come with her and said she would make it work somehow. They entered the prayer hall first. Hisui and Odette were awed by the solemn atmosphere. Tereshina suggested they pray together. She closed her eyes and prayed for her great tree to grow splendidly, for everyone in the village to live in good health, for the territory to prosper, for the population to grow, for tourists to come in droves, and for the village to someday become a big town. She also prayed for tomorrow's discussion to go well and for herself to receive some kind of blessing. She wondered if she was asking for too much too soon. Hisui asked what Tsurushina had prayed for. Tsurushina said she had prayed for everyone in Tsurin village to live in good health, among other things, but admitted she might have gotten a bit greedy. They moved on. Odette asked what was next. She suggested they ask a priest or priestess of blessing to offer a prayer for Tsurin village. Tsurushina showed them a list she had made of things to handle at the Great Temple this trip, since future rites would be held at the minor temple near the village. She described it as strictly speaking a quest list. First, she wanted to ask a priest or priestess of blessing to offer a prayer for Tsurin village. Giselle thanked her. Tsurushina noted the other items on the list might be difficult to do right away. What remained was touching the Great Temple's great tree and reading the sacred text that required priestess rank or higher. She thought those two would be where lots of temple staff were, and she could not just sneak in. Then there was one more quest. The true ending of the game involved sealing the entity that withers the great tree. But that quest was achieved when the heroine and Lord Solitique joined forces to seal it, so it seemed impossible for her as the villainess. She realized that if those two did not end up together, the world could be destroyed. She wondered if she really should have had Lord Solitique focus on nurturing his love with the heroine. Odette and Hisui asked if something was wrong. Tsurushina said it was nothing, telling herself it was not a crisis for today or tomorrow, and that she needed to do what she could right now. They went to request the village prayer. A temple staff member received their donation and said the blessing priestess would offer a prayer. They were led to a room where Priestess Ange was waiting. Tsurushina introduced herself as Tsurushina Linkart and humbly requested her kind favor. Priestess Ange introduced herself and said she had received the blessing of Sol, the sun god. She was one who served Sol. Tsurushina noticed the sacred text. They had used it in the blessing ceremony too, and she might get a chance to read it after all. It turned out you could see it more often than she had thought. Priestess Ange began the prayer, offering blessings for those who lived in devotion, invoking the light that watches over and illuminates the world, and vowing to walk together nurturing life until the time of sleep. She called upon the sun's blessing and its mercy to descend upon Tsurin village of the kingdom of Albarat. A pillar of light rose up. Tsurushina and the others thanked the priestess. The prayer was concluded. Odette remarked she was surprised it ended faster than expected. Tsurushina reflected that perhaps the strength of a prayer was not about how long it took. She thought to herself that the million-luz donation really hurt coming out of her pocket money. Odette commented that the pillar of light rising up was mesmerizing and wondered if light was pouring down on the village right now. Tsurushina said most likely. Back in her room, Tsurushina told Odette and Hisui she would rest now and they could spend their time as they liked. Once alone, she said it was time for the fun part, and activated the Asgard system. She confirmed she had secured several new skills. She figured out that Heart of Prayer was gained when she prayed in the prayer hall. Heart of Donation was when she applied for Giselle's blessing rite. Child of the Territory was when Giselle received the rite and was granted the seal of blessing, and Temple's Blessing was when the blessing priestess offered the prayer. The new skills included Heart of Donation, which made the temple shop available, Heart of Prayer, which increased residents' resistances, Child of the Territory, which increased residents' stamina, and Temple's Blessing, which increased crop yields. She was pleased they had gotten a bunch of village beneficial skills. She noted they could now use the staff-only temple shop, and wondered if books about the temple might be better than game-clearing items. She thought that if they kept books in the village, the kids could read and study, and it should broaden their futures. She decided she would try going to the temple shop tomorrow. That night, Tsurushina snuck out at midnight when the temple was quiet. She decided now was a good time to check the temple basement. She reasoned that the final boss should still be sealed underground for now and just taking a look should be fine. She noted that roaming around at this hour would look suspicious. To reach the hidden passage to the basement, she needed to get into the prayer hall. The problem was whether it was open. She found it unlocked. Other places required permission to enter, but the prayer hall was a place to freely offer prayers, so there was no need to lock it. She pardoned her intrusion and recalled that this was where the heroine and the romance target had an affection-raising event in the game. She wished she had brought Lady Mary along but told herself she was a longtime fan of the game, so please overlook at least this much. She remembered there was a hidden passage behind the statue. She said the passphrase and the statue moved, revealing an entrance. She was glad that she could even enter. It was cold inside and only autumn. The underground passage was so poorly built she would not have guessed it was in the same temple. She thought maybe that made it perfect as a place where the final boss would lurk. It was getting colder and colder with an ominous feel. She reached a massive door sealed with heavy chains and a padlock. She confirmed it was sealed tight and was relieved. She recalled that as the game progressed, at some point the seal would break and an incident would occur where the great tree withered. In the game, the final boss's form was never directly shown. A low voice said only that it would wither every great tree. That was all it said. Tsurushina wondered what in the world was sealed beyond there, a being with the power to wither the great tree. She confirmed it was properly sealed at least, and decided she should head back. But then a voice called out from behind the sealed door asking who was there. A voice called out from behind a chained door asking who was there. Tereshina heard it and was startled. Realizing a voice was coming from behind the door, she cautiously approached and opened it. The voice told her it did not matter since he could not leave anyway, and even if she found out about him, nothing would change. Tereshina thought to herself that this must be the final boss. She asked who he was. He seemed confused that she did not know, but she thought he did not seem scary at all. She was surprised he answered her normally. The voice then asked if she wanted power, offering to break the seal in exchange. Tereshina realized he intended to make a deal and asked if he was a demon. She declared that she did not need any demonic power. The voice admitted this was not the reaction he expected. He then dramatically offered to grant her the power she desired and told her to make the contract. Tereshina was frightened and refused. She asked if he was not a demon, then whether he was some kind of talking monster. The voice asked why she was answering his question with another question, and asked if she was a priestess. She said she was not a priestess, and the voice pointed out that she hardly answered his questions properly either. He concluded that she must be an outsider. Tereshina panicked, realizing she had just admitted to being an outsider herself. She worried that outsiders were not allowed in underground areas, and if this being told anyone she was here, it would cause a diplomatic incident that would drag the crown prince into it as well. The voice assured her he did not intend to blame her. She was relieved and thought that he could talk normally and was not scared. He did not seem like a terribly evil being at all. He seemed just like a human. She wondered why he would be locked up here, and whether the temple would really allow something so unethical even for a criminal. She asked what he was. Tereshina introduced herself as Tereshina Linkart, figuring that since it was their first meeting and she was an outsider, he would not tell her anything. The voice recognized her as the Blessingless One. She nervously confirmed it. The voice introduced himself as Hale. Tereshina noted that from the way they were talking, Hale seemed like an ordinary person. She asked why he was here. Hale claimed he was shy around people. She immediately thought that was a lie. Hale burst out laughing and called her a funny woman. Tereshina remarked that no one had ever called her that before, and that Hale was pretty weird himself. Hale brushed it off. Hale mentioned it was almost dawn and that breakfast should arrive soon. Tereshina said she needed to get back before someone came, but stopped to ask Hale one more thing. She asked if he was trapped there, and if he could go outside, would he want to? Hale insisted he was just shy around people and that being a shut-in suited him fine, adding that they brought him 3 meals and naps. Tereshina stifled a laugh. Hale told her not to make him laugh. She said goodbye to Hale and hurried off. She thought that at least he did not seem like a final boss type, but then she wondered if maybe he was. She reflected that both Hale and the temple were hiding something, and wondered just who Hale really was. Tereshina made it back to her room safely. She wondered how Hale knew about the Blessingless, since that setting was not in the game. She considered that maybe the final boss was Hale after he lost his mind. The door to his cell did not look like it could open on its own, and it did not seem like he ever went outside to gather information. Since his meals were delivered, someone from the temple had to be involved, and he might have learned about her from them, or maybe the entire temple was in on it. She decided she should deepen her relations with the temple so she could get information from them if something happened. If she did, maybe she could stop Hale before he became the final boss. She also thought that if she saved him and earned his favor, she could take refuge there if she ever got banished, but she immediately dismissed that idea as too convenient. Overwhelmed by everything she had to do, developing the village, avoiding the bad ending, improving skills, building the temple, she decided to take a nap. Prince Solitique came by to check on Tereshina but was told she was still resting. He said it was fine and told them to let her rest well since she must be exhausted from the long journey. The next morning, Tereshina greeted Odette, who told her that Prince Solitique had come by and kindly let her sleep in. Tereshina felt bad for making him wait. Odette then noticed Tereshina's outfit from the night before. Tereshina panicked about her clothes and scrambled to explain, claiming she had woken up early because she was restless about the day's discussion on blessings and had gone to pray in the sanctuary. Odette believed her and praised her devotion. Tereshina was relieved. Odette fixed her hair and showered her the best she could, but she admitted that she felt like she still had not brought out Tereshina's full beauty yet. She promised to keep working hard, adding that Tereshina's beauty could not be expressed in words. Tereshina smiled, feeling overwhelmed with the kind compliments. She asked Odette if she could prepare something light for breakfast. Pleased with Odette's progress, Tereshina went shopping at the Grand Temple, which Hisui had not known was possible. She thought it was probably not well known, a player privilege. She ordered 3 bottles of blessed water which repelled monsters, and 1 copy of Temple Tales, a book about temple history and blessings. The blessed water cost 10,000 roos each, and the book cost 3,000 roos, totaling 33,000 roos. She thought it was expensive and asked Hisui to handle the payment, lamenting that her savings kept vanishing ever since she arrived. She checked the book but found that her blessing was not recorded in it either. Hisui remarked that it was a blessing not even recorded in a book. Tereshina hoped that today's discussion would reveal something, and that it would be a good blessing. Tereshina and Odette remarked that it sounded lively outside. Hisui called Tereshina from the hallway, asking if he was fine to enter. Sarishina told him to come in. He told her that the high priest would be handling today's meeting about her blessing. Sarishina was caught off guard, imagining what this would mean. Solitique complimented Sarishina, telling her she looked very beautiful and that the outfit suited her well. She thanked him. Sarishina thought to herself that they were meeting the high priest whose rank was even above a crown prince, and her heart had been pounding non-stop. Solitique told her it was all right and that he was with her. They sat down in a meeting room. Sarishina said she was getting nervous again. Solitique told her it was okay. He mentioned that he just hoped they could at least learn whether there was a blessing or not, but added that if even the high priest could not tell, it might never be clarified. The high priest entered and apologized for keeping them waiting. Solitique introduced himself as Solitique Lydia Alberard, first prince of the kingdom of Alberard, and introduced Sarishina as his fiancée. The high priest introduced himself as Reucalia Asgards and said he was pleased that the god's guidance had brought them together. Reucalia invited them to sit and said he had heard they came to consult about a divine blessing. He asked if he could hear the details right away. Solitique agreed. Solitique explained that a black flower had bloomed on the great tree for someone blessed by Frey, god of fertility, but the moment Sarishina touched it, it turned into a white flower. At that time, a mark of blessing appeared in Sarishina's left eye. Sarishina showed Reucalia a copy of the mark, recalling that when she touched the great tree's flower, choices had appeared, and she decided the tree's fate, and thought that should be a clue to her blessing, but she could not say that carelessly since the high priest was not necessarily a good person. Reucalia told them not to be so on guard, assuring them he would not bite. Sarishina thought for a second that he had read his mind. Reucalia explained that he was seeing this mark for the first time but that it simply meant no precedent existed. Solitique said there were many gods in the world, and even in their country only a handful of people received blessings from the gods. He told them there was no need to be anxious. Reucalia confirmed that although he was young as the high priest he could at least sense whether a blessing existed and how strong it was. He asked Sarishina to show her the blessing and requested her hand. Sarishina was surprised that the high priest could do that. Reucalia took her hand, leaving Sarishina's heart racing. She said it was shameful that the temple at the time of Sarishina's blessing ritual had lacked anyone with a blessing strong enough to judge its presence. As the one in charge of the temple, she sincerely apologized for having deemed Sarishina as being without a blessing. Sarishina was moved that the person at the pinnacle of the temple had apologized to her and asked Reucalia to raise his head. Reucalia asked to examine things in a bit more detail and invited Sarishina to sit. Reucalia then confirmed that Sarishina did bear a blessing from a goddess. She suddenly leaned in very close to Sarishina, placing her forehead against Sarishina's, explaining that she was still young and needed to touch the blessing's mark directly to tell certain things. Sarishina was startled. Solitique was visibly upset, thinking that he had never gotten that close to Sarishina himself, and wondering if the high priest had already forgotten that he had just introduced her as his fiancée. Reucalia calmly told him it was all right and asked if he saw that he was not doing anything improper. Solitique nervously agreed, though Sarishina suspected he must be angry inside. Reucalia said that the act was necessary to investigate the blessing and apologized for not explaining beforehand. Sarishina told her she was simply startled on her own. Reucalia then announced his findings. Sarishina bore a blessing from a goddess, though she could not determine the name. Solitique reflected that Sarishina had always been bothered by not having a blessing, had worried she was unworthy as his fiancée, had refrained from going out to avoid troubling her family, and that many people had spoken ill of her. He felt he had not been able to help her when she was hurting, but now she would be freed from being called without blessing. He congratulated her. Sarishina thanked him. Sarishina then thanked High Priest Reucalia for his help. Reucalia said that from now on Sarishina would no longer be considered without a blessing, and that she was astonished because she had never expected a blessing from a goddess. He admitted they had made Sarishina endure a long and painful time, and said that the lack of a blessing mark had been obvious at a glance, so they should have contacted her for re-verification much sooner. She added that the person who oversaw the original blessing ritual would face disciplinary action. Solitique agreed. Reucalia noted that not knowing whose blessing it was proved truly intriguing, and speculated it might be a goddess related to plants, forests, the earth, or fertility, since the blessing changed the color of flowers. He said she would investigate the goddess further. Sarishina felt awful troubling her but said she would be grateful for continued assistance. Reucalia told her there was no need to be so formal, saying he was curious as well. Sarishina thought that even as high priest Reucalia did not act haughty and even reassured them and decided he was a good person. Reucalia then suggested that if they went beneath the great tree, Sarishina might be able to use the power of her blessing and asked her to accompany her. Sarishina agreed, surprised at how easily the invitation came, and Reucalia asked if they should go. Reucalia wondered what kind of blessing Sarishina had and said he was excited to find out. Solitique called out to Reucalia, reminding him that Sarishina was his fiancée and asking him to refrain from such behavior. Reucalia admitted he had gotten a bit restless, thinking he might get to witness a goddess's power firsthand. Reucalia apologized, saying he was still young and not very good at controlling his emotions. Solatik told him it was fine as long as he was considerate of Terashina. Solatik offered to escort Terashina himself. Ryokalia showed them the great tree of the Grand Temple from a window. Terashina was amazed by how many colors of flowers were blooming and said it was beautiful. Solatik mentioned that the tree was 1 or 2 sizes larger than the great tree in Albarard, and Rayukalia told him that the priests and priestesses took great care of it. Solatikake said he was deeply moved to see such a precious tree with his own eyes, and that the great tree inside the royal castle grounds was impressive, but this one surpassed it. Ryokalia led them to the stairs going beneath the great tree, warning that the stairs were long. Terashina thought the staircase was scary but said nothing. Solatikake offered to support her. They arrived beneath the great tree. Terashina could not believe she was actually there, thinking that if she had tried to come alone, the priests would have caught her and it could have turned into an international incident for trespassing. Ryokalia asked if Terashina noticed anything unusual while looking at the great tree, such as feeling power within herself or any sensation in her marked left eye. Terashina said she unfortunately felt nothing. Ryokalia explained that by touching the great tree, Terashina could feel the blessing within herself more strongly, and that there was a chance she might personally sense the goddess's power. Terashina was excited and thought to herself that she could finally get closer to understanding her blessing. Ryokalia told her to touch the great tree. Terashina recalled that by touching the great tree in the Grand Temple she could acquire the skill called Primordial Great Tree, which increased the growth speed of the great tree in her own territory. She was thrilled to be getting a skill from this and could not believe they were actually letting her touch the tree, but of course with everyone watching her she felt a lot of pressure. She thought to herself that her power was supposed to be one that changed fate, and there was no fate here that needed changing. She thanked the great tree for always watching over them and figured her power probably would not activate anyway. The moment she touched the tree, a burst of light and energy erupted. Terashina was caught in the surge. Solatik and Hisui looked on in shock as the great tree reacted powerfully to her touch. Terashina wondered what was going on. Hisui called out asking if she was alright. Terashina said her body seemed fine. Ryokalia told her to wait, pointing out that she was glowing and that her eye color had changed. Hisui asked what it all meant as Terashina was relieved that things seemed to return to normal. Ryokalia told Hisui to calm down, admitting that even he had not expected Terashina to possess power this strong. Ryokalia told them to look at the great tree. Ryokalia placed his hand on the tree and explained that the growth of the great tree was influenced by gods and spirits. He said this particular great tree was among the most powerful of them all, and when someone with a divine blessing touched it, that power manifested and became visible. Solatik noted that Terashina had been shining with the same brilliance as Ryokalia. Ryokalia explained that the light showed how much a person was loved by the gods, and that it was even used when selecting the next high priest. He told Solatik that this meant Terashina possessed an equally strong blessing. Solatik asked if he could touch the great tree as well. Ryokalia gave him permission, and he said he was honored. Solatik touched the tree. He noticed his blessing's power did not seem that strong. Ryokalia told him that was not the case at all and that his light ranked among the stronger ones. She said it was better to consider herself and Terashina as exceptions, and ask someone else to try touching the tree. An attendant touched it, and the result was a normal level of light. Ryokalia confirmed that it was about the usual level. Terashina thought that Solatik truly had a strong divine blessing, which made sense since he was a nation's crown prince and the main character of the story. But she then wondered about herself whether she was this strong only out of pity because she was the villainess. Ryokalia told Terashina that her blessing truly surprised him and sincerely apologized again for giving her an incorrect result before and neglecting to verify it sooner. He promised to contact them once they learned more about the blessing. Terashina said it was more than enough that she now knew she had a blessing all along. Solatik asked that the person who made the original judgment be properly disciplined. Ryokalia agreed. An attendant informed Ryokalia that it was almost time. Ryokalia said she had another appointment to attend. Solatik thanked her for her valuable time. Ryokalia said the pleasure was his, that it had been a very fruitful meeting and invited them to visit the temple again any time. Solatik told Terashina he was glad for her, saying she had received a blessing from a goddess at that. Terashina said she could not wait to tell her father and everyone in the village. Solatik then told her there was something he wanted to talk about. They went back to the room where food and drinks were prepared. Solatik showed her flower juice, saying he had bought it in the town of Kuriko. Terashina said it smelled wonderful, and wished she had known such a lovely drink existed so she could have bought some too. Solatik congratulated her on receiving a goddess's blessing. Terashina thanked him. She reflected that she truly did have a blessing, and said it might be hard to truly feel it right away. She could hardly put it into words. Solatik told her there was no rush, and for now she should just be happy. Terashina smiled and agreed.